Hear that sound? That's the future knocking on your door. Gear up for an unprecedented experience with HomeBrew AI. An electrifying community of brainiacs, AI enthusiasts, digital alchemists, and knowledge seekers. This is where fellowship intermingles with creativity. Build bridges with fellow trailblazers, plunge into intellectual odysseys, and let your synapses jive to the cadence of progress. We're embarking on an ambitious endeavor to chronicle the singularity. So head over to HomeBrew AI, where the news is hot, the ideas are brewing, in the singularity. Well, that's for you to find out.
So Johnny is late. I don't know what's up with him. No explanation. Maybe his girlfriend has something to do with that. We'll talk about that with him later. But how are you, Lex?
Well, I don't know if you could tell, but I am burnt to a crisp.
Yeah, you've been out like dirt bike riding or what?
Yeah, see the line there?
That looks.
It was
fun.
hot. It was, I think it was about like 100 degrees or something. That's, yeah, about 100 degrees.
Yeah. So how often do you do that? For the record, like, do you rent bikes? Do you own bikes? What do you do?
Yeah, own. Usually every like weekend, ish. Yeah.
Really? I didn't know this about you.
Yeah.
Is it like?
Yeah. Well, not for like a long time, but a couple hours.
Well, I know you travel a lot for work, so I was wondering how you fit that in.
Yeah. Well, it also depends where, but like in Florida, Georgia, I think some of the top tracks are there. Otherwise, like, you can't in the winter, and you like in places where it snows, and yeah, Europe has some cool spots, but it's just for fun.
You know what I've seen a lot of is those European like mountain crawl videos where they try to get up with like a dirt bike or whatever. You ever seen those?
It's not electric, just a pedal bike.
Oh no. I'm talking about like in Europe. There's like big hills that people try to go up. You ever see people do that? They have like modified dirt bikes and vehicles and stuff.
Oh yeah. I've seen that. A bunch of French guys, I think, use those. They have like a crank. There's no starter. Like they have to put a starter on it to start their bike.
Yeah,
it's like it goes on the crank because you can't. You don't have enough power to do it with your foot, and there's no electric starter.
I wonder how eventually like the electric bikes will do on that. Did you watch the video I sent, by the way, on the?
I didn't have a chance yet. I will.
The Alta.
I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen a couple of the bikes, and I guess they're all right, but it's different.
But basically, to explain that one to you, it's just because of the nature of torque with electric motors being able to dynamically update. They did all this math for the battery based on actual motorcycles, and they measured it all out meticulously. How much charge are we going to need to win a supercross race, right? And the problem is they didn't account for making a better vehicle. So because it's technically a superior vehicle to use, just because it's constantly adjusting the torque so that the bike is always going full power up hills, in the dirt, in the sand, you name it, right? And then you also don't have to go into the clutch at all. So like turning is really seamless. You don't have to shift gears. Turning's more seamless. You name it, right? Basically, they made such a better bike with electricity that they ran out of power before the race was over on the Supercross. That they were in front like by a lot, and the bike just died because they did calculations for a gasoline vehicle, and they were so it's kind of a funny like story there. And then the moral of the story is that Harley bought them out because they wanted to get it as cheap as possible so that they could use that tech for their own Harleys and stuff. And it killed the entire company, and there's all sorts of legal locking, and we don't have a superior dirt bike because of that. The only thing that people don't like about it, obviously, is like people. There's only like 1,000 of them, so there's only a few videos of them. Yep. But people really like riding those dirt bikes, just because of how they feel. They fly up hills, no problem, but they don't realize how fast they're going because they're used to the motor on the dirt bike and shifting gears and stuff, telling them how fast they're going. So it's like it's kind of a mind fuck riding them, but they are very good. The other argument for them is that they would make motocross and stuff like this significantly bigger because you don't have to go far out into the middle of nowhere to do your motocross stuff. They're quieter engines with the electricity, so you'd be able to basically take and expand the hobby like significantly. So that would be the argument for like why you would want.
In terms of quietness, I could see that for sure.
Basically, you could have them in like near neighborhoods and stuff, and no one would care. They wouldn't really hear it unless the only like music complaints, I guess. But yeah, it's interesting how like powerful electric really is going to be. That's one of my favorite examples is the Alta, and
I knew a friend that was building one in Canada, I think a couple years ago. He was trying to build one of his own it was a dirt bike, but kind of for the street. I don't know how far he got with that, but he was having a lot of fun with that too. It's pretty cool. It's like it's cool that it's quiet, and you get a lot of torque.
Yeah, we finally have Johnny. I'll invite him.
Johnny. What was I going to say?
Who knows?
Oh yeah, I got some Neuralink drip.
Oh shit! Where'd you get that? Did you just buy it off the site, or you were at an event or something?
No, there was this website where they have like these crazy promos for like custom stickers, custom shirts, that sort of thing. It was like $9 free shipping, and I was like, just gonna drop a logo or something on it, whatever. So I'm rocking Neuralink for $9.
So Johnny can't accept because he's on mobile, by the way. So I feel like I'm in app hell right now because I really mean it. There's nowhere to do this on Twitter if you have desktop, so you can't have like a proper mic or anything for the hosts. Then you need like some sort of emulation or to run it through mobile, which lowers the quality significantly. Yep. And then Discord doesn't have video API, so I can't record the video. There are other things. There are other things we can do. Yeah, there's other things we can do that we're probably going to have to move to at some point, but it's a strange. I don't know. It just feels like there should be an app solution to all this, but there isn't.
Yeah, probably will be at some point.
Yeah, I feel like you know when you've like done something a certain way for a long time, and there's all these like barriers to get over, and then like one update changes everything, and like that thing that you were annoyed about is
breaks
gone.
Everything.
It's so annoying.
Yeah, I'm sure every app scraper or web scraper on the internet agrees with you. Where they change their UI a little bit, everything breaks.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think I hate programming. I think that's where I'm at now. I don't enjoy this at all. It's like a chore, like trying to fix things up, but at least I have some things that are working. That's
it's funny you say that because I think that's a common consensus across programmers. Most of them just don't like doing it.
Well, it's like I welcome the AI future because programming is like it's something I now have to do because someone didn't build this. It's like that feeling of like I have to do it myself, whatever thing that you're doing. So I don't know. It's weird. Like I can work on trying to get us to Twitter Spaces, but I don't know exactly what the solution there is. And I mean, we can pull up the AirPods here, and sit here and talk, and it'll be horrible quality. And I don't know if anyone would like it, but maybe it would. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Figure something out, I guess.
Yeah.
Also, why is Johnny trying to come on mobile? Doesn't he have?
You really can't accept on mobile. Oh, he doesn't let you. Why doesn't he just? Why doesn't he request?
I'm here now. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Welcome,
the internet
Johnny.
knocked out the storms. I didn't realize today because I've been outside fishing for the past like 4 hours with my girlfriend's younger brother. So I'm just out there fishing. Have no idea the internet's out because I'm not using it. And then
we got a fisherman.
About let's see. Yeah, at about 3:55, I run in, and I'm like, okay, time for the podcast to start. And I check, and I realize that the internet's not working, and I'm like, oh shit. Well, I'll have to hotspot in. And well, first I was like, I'll run down. I'll be like 10 minutes late, no big deal. So I run down, I reset the internet, and that doesn't fix it because we had a bunch of storms, and we got more storms rolling through right now. We've had some like purple on the radar.
Mm. I
And
was
then go ahead.
yeah, and I forgot where you were, but in Florida, in South Florida, there was storms too
Hmm.
recently for a bit. A lot of rain.
Well, I drove right through it. So I did the 4 hours from Chicago back down to Indy, and it
Mm,
was just like the storm was like this on the map, and my
mm.
exact path was this way. So it's
Following
just
you.
storms the entire yeah. But and then I was like, okay, well, I'll just use mobile. But the thing is, if you have an Ethernet connection, which I obviously do, it won't like pick up the mobile data properly that I'm using for my phone to hotspot in. And so I forgot that. So I'm like, well, why is this not loading? So then I unplugged my Ethernet, and now everything's working. So
Well, glad to have you.
yeah,
I like the
it's a bit.
jacket, by the way. It's nice.
It's my fishing jacket. So
Why don't you have hooks all through it? You know.
no, I'm a little better than that. So I don't get hooked too often. I caught a couple hybrid bluegill, which was fun.
I've been fishing a lot of
So
times in my life, and I've never caught a fish. I don't know what that says about me, but it says
Actually,
something.
yeah, it
technique. It's all
was the same
technique.
thing. It was the same thing for me for like the first like while. Didn't catch anything, but more
I,
recently got some new fishing gear.
yeah,
Got a couple.
my brother's like really into that, like fishing. He just catches and releases all day. He lives like near a pond, and he sends like the family group text. It's just like fish, 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 fish from him. You know, that's his thing after work every day. But I went fishing a lot as a kid with my grandpa all the time. Anytime he could take me, he would. Never a damn fish, ever. He'd catch like big fish next to me, but it's weird. I don't know. I did catch a fish in like a little creek off the chute of a, what's it called, a lake, like this little creek that the
Hmm.
lake floods into when it's higher
Yep.
water. And I went in there and I caught one with my hand, a pretty big one too. But that's the only fish I ever caught, and I caught it with my damn hands. So they don't like my bait, is what I'm saying.
It just like I find better odds river fishing. I really don't like fishing in lakes and ponds unless I'm out there on a boat. Because to me, it's just very much unless if I'm drinking a beer, you know what I mean. If I'm putting a 6 pack back, then it's one thing. I smoke a cigarette, I'll drink a couple beers. Then I'm just hanging out, and then I just happen to be catching fish every once in a while. But if I'm like actually fishing, I'm putting waders on. I'm going in the river. You know what I mean? I'm wading in there. I'm kayaking in a river, and I'm casting at certain little fish holes and stuff like that. Because
Yeah,
that's like the best way to fish is up along the riverbank. Because the way that fish are is if the river's coming this way, right, they're going to be looking upstream for stuff coming down. So what you want to do is you want to cast above them, and you want to be below them, because if you're in front of them, right, where they're looking, they will see you up above the water, and they'll get spooked. So you have to be behind where the fish are. You have to cast in front of them, and you have to bring it on down in front of them, and then it'll jump out and it'll get it. That's like the ideal way to do it. And that's obviously not if you're fishing with bait, but if you're fishing with a lure. So I think when I talk about fishing, my southern accent starts to seep in a little bit. So I apologize. So if you're fishing with a lure, then or a jig or something like that, then you always sit behind where the fish is, which is gonna be downstream on the river. So
I think the last time I was in a river, I almost drowned.
yeah, maybe fishing isn't for you. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. I was
maybe it's
swimming all
just
day as a kid. I was all excited to be at the river, and then I hopped in like one last time, and then my body gave out completely. And I barely got my hand above the water, and my cousin jumped in and saved my ass. I was drowned. Like, I'm serious.
I had a similar experience where I had one of those noodles, so I didn't have a life jacket. I was out in the lake, and it was a big kind of like rip current kind of took my noodle away from me, and the wind started blowing it out in the middle of the lake, and I was like, I'm going after it, and I was like 8, and so I'm like in the middle of this massive lake, and my mom tells there's an older guy there who was like, he was in really good shape, he was like 16 or 17, and she's like, go get him. And so he's chasing after me. They're hollering for me to like swim back to shore, and I was like, no, 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 I got this. Let me get this. And so he just grabs me and just basically like power swims me back to the shore.
That happened to me as well. I was on Lake Isabella in California, and I lost like one of those like floaty things. I don't remember what they were. I had like I don't remember what I was floating on, but I lost the like the back thing that you drag behind the boat. You know, it's one of those floatable raft things that everyone
Yeah.
you got handles to hold on to, but your grip
Yep,
strength
yep, yep.
isn't that good as a kid, so you go flying when they make a big turn or something. But it started floating out into the ocean, and there's all these people around with boats and shit. And my stubborn ass at like I think I was 10 just kept swimming out. This is like after I'd already almost drowned once. So I'm just like, oh, I could swim out into the middle of the lake. Every time I'd swim out, like the further I swim out, further I go, it just gets further and further away, no matter what. And I'm just like not giving up. And then eventually, at one point, my uncle, who like took us there at the time, he noticed. He's like, "Oh shit, you're out there!" Like someone. I was just like watching him, and suddenly he's out in the middle of the damn lake, and a dude came up on a boat and picked me up. He's like, "Hey, dude, what are you doing out here?" And I was like, "Try to get that." And I'm I'm just like a little kid being an idiot, damn near killing myself. It's weird to think about what you get up to when like nobody's looking as a kid. You'll like you really will throw yourself
A
into
lot
the
of dumb
maw.
shit.
But
A lot of dumb shit.
yeah. Honestly, I wasn't really worried then because you're probably not going to run into issues there because you're surrounded by people, and I think I had like that aura of bravery because there's just safety in numbers. There was a ton of people there. It was like a Memorial Day weekend. Really fun. Good times.
Animals do the same thing. If there's a lot of them, they'll be acting goofy.
I think that was the first time I got drunk, like really drunk. I was like 10. We were out on a lake.
That sounds about
and
right for me.
My cousin was 2 years older than me, and basically there was someone who was like playing bartender, like having a good time. I don't know, some big Mexican guy. He was like a cool guy, but like we would just go up to the bar, and he was so hammered he didn't care. He was just giving us drinks. We're just little kids, and yeah, that was the first time I got drunk.
That reminds me of my freshman year, and when I was in college, my freshman year, um, I went to Chicago for a Model United Nations thing. This is actually super embarrassing. I had a bit of a drinking issue, so I like
Me
walked
too.
up to this is at the Hyatt, so the very fancy Hyatt Inn hotel in Chicago, like the Regency or whatever. We had a Model United Nations conference, and so we're all wearing suits and stuff. And I was like, "Watch this!" And I walked straight up to the bar, and I was like, "Yeah, like I'll have this. I think old fashioned because that's like my go-to when I was underage. Is I'd ask for an old fashioned because like no one's gonna be like, well, this guy's 14, you know what I mean? But I think I was like 19 at the time, and so like the guy's like, okay, sure, what do you want in it? And I was like, fuck, I was like panicked for a second, and then I remembered whatever it was my dad usually asks for, and then I ended up getting fucking hammered, like really drunk, and we were like and giving speeches in front of like the entire there's like I want to say like tons like an entire United Nations conference amount of people we were giving speeches in front of, and I was blasted, and no one knew except for the people because I was Latvia, so like a couple of these sort of like Eastern European countries we were kind of making a consolidated effort to be against anything Russia was putting forward. And so like we would like constantly call for caucuses. We're like, can we get a 30-minute caucus? And like people would be in the bathrooms like smoking pot and like doing shots. And I have to imagine that the United Nations operates very similarly. I
Yeah,
can't imagine that it
I think so
operates any different.
too.
This story just
I
gets
got a
worse and
15-minute
worse.
um
People
Yeah,
smoke
but
pot
I
in
ended up getting
that.
caught. I ended up getting caught because I was really, really drunk, and the teacher's like, "Are you drunk?" I was like, "No, no, I'm not drunk. No." And so I got reprimanded by my university. They were really pissed.
Yeah, that wouldn't work for me. I could be 30 and they would still card me. The last time I was out to like buy something that you needed a card for, it was just like, "Can I get your card, sir? You look very young." And I'm just like, "Dude, I'm towering over you." This little guy behind the counter, he's like, "I don't believe you're over 21, sir."
Man, it's
They
21.
It's a problem.
when
But
when I was in England, we went out to get like the ingredients for a meal, and so we got cooking wine, not real wine, cooking wine in it. So it was me, Jasmine, and her like 16-year-old brother, and they're like, "Does he have ID on him?" And I'm like, "Excuse me?" And they're like, "Well, he needs to have ID too." And he's like, "Well, we're not drinking this. It's cooking wine. I understand there's alcohol in it, but like, if I'm gonna like buy alcohol, I'm gonna buy real alcohol. Like, why would I bring him in here to buy him cooking wine as alcohol? Like, that doesn't make any sense." And they're like, "Well, you just," and then she's like, "He's my little brother. We have the same last name. Like, why would I be getting him drunk off of cooking wine? Like, it's very clear that this is an ingredient in this dish. Like, this is a main, and it's an English dish. Everyone knows. Like, everyone I've talked to in England has had it before. I don't remember what it was. So there's like no reason that there would be any confusion. And they're like, you can't buy that. You have to leave the store."
well,
It's
according to
only in
Lex here, yeah,
yeah.
go ahead, Lex, explain.
Well, okay. Well, before I want to say something, only in America, and I found this out more recently. I don't drink, but at liquor stores they ask for everyone's ID. That's crazy. Like where I'm from, it's like 18 or 19. Like in Canada, it's 18 or 19 depending on the province. And they don't ask for everyone's ID. That's fucking wild.
No, this was in England.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah. So like the U.S., but like that's not standard in England, right? That was just, I
hmm,
think it was Waitrose. So that was like that, and like they're like, well, technically in our subsection code, we have the right to ask for everyone's ID, which like I don't even have that happen in the U.S.
super
Like
lame.
I've had a couple places maybe that have done stuff like that, like liquor stores. Like I get a liquor store, right? I can understand that. Like if you
Yeah.
have like 5 people in a liquor store, yeah, I'm gonna ask, are you guys all whatever? Because you're buying liquor. But if you're buying like cooking items, or you're like, imagine you're out with your mom and you're like 8, and she's buying
No, yeah,
like
in
a
Canada,
bottle of wine.
Dude, in Canada, you can go to a liquor store with kids and shit. They don't ask.
I don't know.
That's
I
crazy. Yeah,
don't think you should be taking your kids to liquor stores. I
Well,
don't
you
know,
don't
but
want to go into a liquor
gotta
store.
teach them early.
You gotta
I'm
get them
just kidding.
started young. You know, you
but it
can't.
also would be really ridiculous if you're out with your mom and she's buying like cooking wine, and they're like, "This is this little shit right here. Does he have ID? Is he
You can't.
21?"
You can't let your kids have an advantage over you. You got
Yes,
to get the
yes.
alcohol poisoning in earlier, so that their
Exactly,
brain is.
exactly.
You
Which is
gotta make
why I
them always
posted in the
dependent
chat.
on you.
Which is why I posted in the chat. Pure vanilla extract, which you could buy at the store, has 35% alcohol.
Yeah, but what else does the pure vanilla extract have in it that you'll overdose on before you'll get drunk? Like, can you really just drink that?
You could try.
I don't know. I
Have you
wouldn't.
tried?
I
Like, do
wouldn't.
you
I
know
wouldn't
from
go for it.
experience? What's the story here? Why do you
No, I
know
found
this?
out.
That vanilla high is good.
No, I found out recently. I haven't drank in like 8 years. But
Yeah, I don't really
no, it's fine. But
partake.
personally, it's not my thing. Like,
Yeah,
dude, you
I
can
think I
buy.
like a pint. I'll have like beer. I can't do any wine makes me sick to my stomach because I've got acid reflux. Hard liquor makes me sick almost instantly. So I can drink like beer and that's it.
Has hard
Mm,
liquor always made you sick almost instantly?
No, didn't used to, but then again, I was like,
you
it
don't live
always
up to the
upset
name.
my stomach, right? I
You
know.
don't live up to
It,
the
it, it
name, Mr. Intense.
Yeah.
it always upset my stomach, but usually I was doing shots. So like at a certain point I was drunk enough to where I didn't notice, right? But then when
Uh-huh.
I was like, "Oh, I think I'll have this like scotch, this really nice scotch or whiskey." And I'd like drink just like a double, and I'd be like, "Oh, oh, what is this? What's happening to me? I don't like this. I feel like I'm dying."
Well, I was curious because like any hard liquor, like even whiskey, would just go down like water to me. I don't know why. I could just drink it straight with nothing in it. But when I got like alcohol poisoning when I was like 21 or something, I could, from that moment on, never drink hard liquor without vomiting. It would just.
Oof.
I to this day, I probably any amount of hard liquor, I will vomit immediately. My body like rejects it. Like, this is the stuff that almost killed you. This cannot be inside you.
Yeah,
Get
you
it out.
can't be. Yeah,
So it's.
that makes sense.
I was wondering if that's what happened to you. If you always had kind of an intolerance to it, because it was
No,
really
I mean,
easy
it's
for me to
just
get drunk.
it's easy. I think my stomach to get like if I'm eating really cheap, greasy food, it'll absolutely mess me up. And then if I do like wine will really mess me up as well.
Did you guys watch the Jake Paul fight last night?
That was last night.
No,
Yeah.
did he
Well,
win?
Nate Diaz?
he won, right? It's basically he fought Nate Diaz, and Nate Diaz just kind of looks like a lizard while he's fighting and just gets beat up, and nothing really matters. Pretty much at the end of it, with the last like 2 rounds or so, Jake Paul's like constantly hugging him so that he doesn't score any more points. So he's ahead on points, and basically wins that way. It's pretty clear that's what
That's why
he did.
I don't give a shit about boxing.
But
I
it
just don't care.
gave me a thought with longevity. Is that the common criticism is that he is always fighting. Not only is he fighting UFC pros, old UFC pros, and beating them or whatever, but they're old, right? It was Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz boxing match. They're going. Nate Diaz
And Nate's a monster, but he's like retired.
Well, he publicly accepted a UFC match, a rematch. So we'll see. It'd be the first time Jake Paul did UFC, but that's not the point of why I'm bringing this up. I was kind of thinking about this as I was watching. The common criticism is how old these people are. Before we get to the point where everyone's like severely augmented through some sort of like programming or crazy gene therapy, I've kind of been thinking about it now, is that what happens to sports when we have longevity? It like, if we keep like a level of like natural people, but they live for a really long time, what type of excellence are we eventually going to see? Do you get what I mean?
Well, I don't know how far you're going to get into this, but we can already look at the women's sports with players that aren't necessarily women.
That's not what we're talking about. My point is the longevity of the athlete is extended.
Yeah,
like
then you have the
couple hundred
best
years
of the
old.
best of the last 200 years, not the last 20 years.
Okay, now you see what I mean. Like, I was thinking, like,
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
level of excellence? Because we always have the arguments. Like, Mike Tyson might make it to longevity. What happens if that guy reverses his age and then comes back in the ring? Right? I could totally see it.
That'd be crazy.
And then everyone who's the greatest right now gets the shit kicked out of them. Right? Like, that's the
Well, like, and
entirely
there's no
possible.
well, think about like Tyson Fury, right? He's
Mhm.
had his peak fighting wise when he was in his 20s. He's in his 30s right now, but his peak matches and his peak skill set is right now, right? Does that make sense? So his endurance and his probably overall strength is not at its peak, but those don't you rarely in sports do those line up, right? Rarely does your peak physicality line up with your peak sports knowledge and
Your
technique.
maturity,
Those
your
two things,
discipline,
yep,
all sorts of stuff.
as an athlete, yeah.
So,
But then your endurance and strength and all that stuff, there is no peak to it. It's you plateau and you stay there. So then you can just continue to, I mean, what the old saying about, I don't really worry about a guy that's practiced 1,000 kicks. I worry about the guy, or 1,000 punches. I worry about the guy that's
it's
thrown one punch 1,000 times.
it's the little what was the small karate guy? I can't remember his name. I don't
Bruce Lee.
remember. Bruce Lee, that's his quote. Yeah. Have you ever seen the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood movie with him in it, where they
Yeah.
make fun of him and he gets kicked into a car? But the point the point there is, like, I also watched today, like, the Counter-Strike Major. So I don't know how much you guys know about like esports and stuff, but you've got all
A
these
decent amount.
legends within like the esports era of Counter-Strike, that are kind of just old now, right? And whether they lost
So they're like what,
motivation,
26?
yeah, like 30s. There's one guy out there who's like 32 who's still competing at like the highest level, but
That's crazy.
they didn't make it
That's
to
rare.
they didn't make it to the major this year, but he won the major last year. His name's Kerrigan. But
Because once
um,
you hit like 26, 27, 28, you're at the end of your career in esports.
well, there's arguments of like it's just that these people start getting families. They start like having like a life outside of esports because they spent so much time like doing the practicing, you name it. Like they put their life on hold for it, right?
If the
And
money
then
was there, then it might be different.
no, the money's there for some of these people at the top. They're getting like $1 million contracts still. This is still
But you don't
happening.
see NBA players retiring at 28.
Yeah,
So I think that argument doesn't necessarily hold as like I'm sure there are some people that drop out of esports because they want to have a family and stuff, right? But if you think about like the amount of like every time they play a basketball game, right? They're like always traveling. Like always traveling. I feel like there's probably a little bit less traveling involved if you play esports because
no,
you're playing on your computer at
it's
home.
significantly more traveling, especially if like you're a United States competitor or vice versa, is because you're going across the pond. You're not competing
Sure,
in a completely different country for basketball or even
but
football.
that's just for your majors and your tournaments because like the lead up to those, at least the way it is in Dota, is they'll have it's not all LAN. So like it starts out, like um, not LAN. It starts out just online, and then you get past a certain point, and then it becomes a LAN tournament. So like then we get to like TI, the international tournament, and then it's all in person. Then you're traveling, and then you have your different majors and stuff. But I mean, I think that's. I mean, I can't. I would say it's probably somewhat similar amount of travel, probably all in all,
So
if you think.
do you think it's literally like an age thing? Like you hit the barrier of like 28 and you're screwed in
Yeah,
esports, or
I think it is at the moment. Yes, because otherwise, because that's why like I think it's part of it is the fact that the meta in esports evolves very quickly. And so honing your knowledge of the meta is different in a sport like basketball. Or like when Michael Jordan came back, he couldn't jump like he used to. And so he had to change his game, but he evolved to it. And so like something like that is a lot, I think, easier to evolve to than there's a brand new patch in Dota. All the items are different. They added 3 new heroes. The mechanics are slightly different. There's new items. The creeps have this different. You know what I mean? That's I feel
do you
like that's
think
just a
it's
lot
like
more
you know when like kids like
muscle
they
memory
learn
is not.
you know kids learn languages faster when everything's like different?
hmm
Like do you think it's like that type of scenario with esports?
I think to some degree it is. I think the other thing is that reaction time is not necessarily as
Your rea-
pertinent
your
in
reaction
some
time peaks at
sports.
your reaction time peaks at 28 roughly. That's
Right.
when like your
So I think
lowest reaction time you can achieve for most people. Um,
that's
I'm
why
sure.
that's why when I say like 26 to 28, like you're getting at the end of your career. And then because then like but I think it's less pertinent in something like basketball, right? Because you don't lose your physical strength as quickly. Like if you're 7'2", right? Even if your reaction time slowed a little bit, you're still 330 pounds and 7'2", right? That doesn't translate into esports as much. I think it might to some degree. It could, but there's got to be a reason if it's not money, because the money thing makes sense to me. Esports players don't get paid the same that an NBA player gets. I mean, I think we can agree on that
Yeah, I mean, my point was there's generally not an issue with money for a lot of these high level competitors, especially the ones
because
that
they're
are at the top.
streaming.
N- just contracts on like, especially Counter Strike. You've got some frequently they're on $1 million contract every year. You know, it's not obviously like NBA level, but they're making a lot of money. But my general point is like I wonder like when we start like being able to reverse stuff like this, like do people compete as long as they want. Like, because
Yeah, absolutely.
if you ever look at Mike Tyson, he's definitely a guy who, like, if he could have fought for every day until now, he probably would have. That's like what he was built to do, is how, as far as he is concerned. So I don't know. It's just amusing, I guess, right? Something to think
No,
about.
I tend to agree. I think that if we could sort of, I think everyone would just compete as long. And I think the skill level would be massively higher. I think the skill level would just increase. I think it would change the dynamic of all sports because
Do you
it's like,
think?
what happens? Who's even going to get recruited?
Do you think there's something where, like, the length of a human life is not enough for you to master something? Like, you've heard the 10,000 hour mark masters any skill, right? What if it's longer,
I think
right?
I think that the level of mastery that we think about, if we think about greats, like if we think about the greatest basketball player, the greatest whatever, right? I think that you can get to a higher, much higher level, maybe to 2 to 3 times of what they have if you had nothing else going on, right? So if we're talking about time spent, and that's not like, oh, I'm sleeping and stuff like that. I'm talking like from birth, trained, you eat, live, sleep it, you know what I mean? That's your specialty, whatever it is. I think that there's ample amount of time for the mastery and the level that we as we see it. But I have no basis for what mastery beyond that would be. You get what I kind of get what I'm saying? Like, especially as a quarterback. I think quarterback's a really good descriptor. And so is like boxing and fighting.
A lot of
Is
like injuries end people's like careers too. That's a big thing in
but
sports like that.
quarterbacks, especially like a big old forehead. What's his name? Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning would just in his mind, he'd see the way the defense is, he'd see the way they're shifting, and he'd go and he'd be running all this shit in his head, and he'd be calling audibles constantly, and he'd just know exactly what he needed to do because he knew the game so well. And there's a lot of people who do, yeah, exactly. There's a lot, there's big forehead. Um, there's a lot of people in boxing as well. I mean, let's just say you have good reflexes, you're a good fighter, and you're trained very well. You're going to be, and you're like an ollie. You're watching it, right? You're being able to. But what if you have boxed so much against so many people that you're starting to pick up on things that are indiscernible to someone who hasn't boxed for 50, 60 years, and you still have the technique and you still have the speed. I
There's
mean, that's
a
that's a level of mastery I can't grasp.
You heard of old man strength?
Yeah.
Within, like, the field of, like, strength sports, the best competitors, like, I think the average age for, like, strongest man in the world was, like, somewhere close to 33, 35, somewhere around there. Like, and you still have people like Mark Felix who's still setting records in the what's it, the Hercules hold. It's this, both arms are out and you're holding chains of these big pillars, and he still sets records at like 55. And he honestly, I think only like 4 years prior, he, along with three other competitors at the time, before Eddie Hall, which is the guy who set the world deadlift record in 2017, he
His
pulled,
blood was just
yeah, but he pulled the record deadlift at the time until Eddie Hall did the very next record, which was a bit over. He pulled the record with three other people at 51, I think. Like 51 years old, you do the most, like, powerful thing you can do, which was still like an unheard of amount. It was 470 or 475, or was it, no, 465 kilograms, right? Was the pull. This is a 51-year-old man, Mark Felix, was able to pull that. And that's so strange to think about. There's so many different, like, sports and athletics that you can get into that have different levels of, like, here's your peak and that's as far as you can go. And, like, I would say that, he wasn't like a high-end competitor as far as strongman went, but he definitely could put up numbers. And it's going to be weird to see what types of things people can do when they have these reverse aging like techniques.
I think there's some sports where there is a limit. Like I think the lifting sports or anything requiring strength, shot put, discus, I think that those have a much higher limit. But I feel like things like high jump and long jump, um, those are we're pretty close to the limit on those already, I think. But that's just as a competitor of those who competed at a high level. Just because any amount of mass that you put on past what you would say your peak high jumper is only going to be you're getting diminishing returns on that. Um, any sort of like technique, we've sort of really figured out the mechanics of it. It's not something that requires really fast twitch. It's a very muscle memory. It's just it's technical for sure. But when we like it's going to be a long time, I think, until we get a new high jump world record. But the guy was also doped out. Anyone who says he isn't, bullshit. He was completely. He was so doped out. I mean, it was
There's a lot of
incredible.
records like that.
If I was on that much dope, I would also be jumping 8 foot. I would also.
Maybe, but there's something to be said for like, I'm kind of sad about like the future of any athletics you can think of is through AI, medical advancement, and like think of like Neuralink, right? You get to the point where eventually like we had these arguments about a guy who he had two running legs, double
And then he
amputee.
killed his wife. That's the guy that ran.
Okay.
He
Thanks.
killed his wife.
Fuck. I'll stop with the story. But anyways, wife murderer,
it's
right? The guy who did
the
that.
wife murder.
They had all these arguments about him because he had these fucking flex foots. They're like springs, right? That you can spring off of. I've seen them built before and all that. But the point is, there's these athletic springs that you can use for running when you're an amputee. And yes, thank you. But there basically was this argument that he had an advantage. You don't have a fatiguing leg. You have a mechanical spring you can go off of, do you think the wife heard that coming towards him real fast, in the middle of the night?
I was going to interrupt you. I'm like, they also made another argument, but that argument was in a court of law, and the argument was that he shot and killed his wife.
Okay, but the point is, the point I'm making is that is a very basic thing that we can do to give someone a leg, right? And there are really legitimate arguments that he had an advantage because he was missing his legs. But the point is, I don't really care what side of that you fall on, but eventually we're going to get to the point where there's all sorts of modifications that people will be able to do to themselves. Every competitor in strongman is doing some crazy ass juice or something. Every bodybuilder the same way. They're on countless like SARMs, whatever they can find, along with steroid use, right? At what point do we have so much like gene therapy, medicine, modifications, you name it, that like the human athletes are no longer human? Like, when do we draw the line? Is like, is the longevity of like sports like completely screwed because at some point you just have two people that are basically humanoid robots competing against each other? Because that's what happened with like nobody gives a shit to watch chess. They want to watch humans do chess with each other, right?
Yeah, I don't really care about watching a robot do chess.
Yeah,
or if you have like humanoid robots that actually just look like humans playing basketball and shit.
Yeah, I mean that might be a thing, but people probably would like Real Steel. Like, has anyone ever seen that movie where it's the robots?
Yeah, the robots beat each other up. I'm interested in this.
Yeah, well,
you need some blood.
But maybe that's interesting. There's like a lot of people that watch the Robot Wars, like the little they got chainsaws on them and shit. They're like cutting each other up in a little arena. It's pretty entertaining.
People like when the robots destroy each other. That's the thing. People, when a big robot hits another big robot, dopamine's going off when
Well,
a
it might
robot's like doing something intelligent.
it might be more fun because like you don't there's no human in the ring that could die. The one robot can smash the other robot's head off. That's funny. Coliseum style stuff, right? I think. Okay, so here's like the thing that people. Most hobbies have moved inside for like tons of people, so that's why you even have any interest in like esports, right? Like you have significant interest in esports. It's been a bit of a grift for a while now, as far as it's not the biggest possible audience that like sports enjoy, but at some point, less and less people are interested in something, and the audience grows for this other thing, and we're all kind of headed towards most people are kind of sedentary life. Your interests are inside. The things you do are video games. It's VR future hellscape. A lot of people think is coming, where everyone's just they're sitting in the pod with their goggles on. So, does that mean people even care about traditional sports anymore, beyond a niche level of interest? Is that what happens? Like, at what point do we transition away, or do we transition to it? What do you guys think?
I don't know. I think maybe the stakes would have to be higher in some ways. Going back to like the bread and circuses, Roman Colosseum, lives on the line kind of thing. I know that sounds really messed up. I'm just theorizing because if you remember like Sword Art Online, like when people might die, I cared, and then when people might not die, I stopped caring pretty quickly because there was no stakes, right? When
Mm-hmm.
they're like, if you die in the game, you die in real life. It's like, okay, there's stakes in this, and they're like, yeah, we're not gonna do that. You can get a game over. You're not gonna die in real life. And it's like, okay, well, I don't really. I know it's messed up. Well, it's a show, so it's not like it's real people. But like, I was like, the stakes are lower. It doesn't feel like there's the same gravity there. So it's possible that things will become more twisted in that way, where we need more stakes, more gravity, higher
Okay.
stakes.
You ever seen the movie Timeless, where like you literally give up the time of your life to buy anything or bet whatever
Hmm.
they're doing?
Yep.
It's with Justin Timberlake, and I forgot the other actress's name, but
The gambling was huge.
it's a good movie. But
In time,
is it In Time? What was Timeless?
where they have like on their arm, they have like a timer, and that's
That's
the
what
money.
it's called. In Time. Sorry,
In
Yeah,
time,
I'm
yeah.
horrible with names if you've never noticed, but
that's a good movie.
yeah, good movie. But the everything in life becomes like a thing of stakes. Instead of trading currency, you literally have minutes left in your life, right? Uh, are we going to move towards some system like this? Because I've had some conversations, right, with like detractors and people who don't believe in any like good future, right? Like it's if we get longevity, the only people that are going to have it are like a few rich people, and all of us are going to
Well,
die.
I will say longevity does really decentivize like the value of money. Because it's like, oh, I have to work. Well, I can work for 500 years. I'll just get it back. Like it's like, and then I'll have 3,000 years to spend it. You know what I mean? So like, in a way, I guess that kind of makes sense to some degree. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, go
They
ahead.
also in that movie, you could see like the real time inflation where cost of stuff was just going up, in a day,
Yeah, they're literally
and
like
then
starving the
yeah.
poorest people out so that they just die, right? Like that's
Well, it's not like you'd accumulate like a bunch of time. Like they literally went to work, got a bit of time, and then you have enough time for the just to work. And then there was like all these sectors, and then one sector basically could do anything.
well,
There was nobody working there.
it's obviously like a strange future to propose, but like in our circumstances, what like Johnny's talking about is like
Mhm.
you've got 500 years to learn all sorts of shit to make money, but who knows if it matters
But the world
past
would
the
change so
500.
much, also. Yeah,
Yeah, so,
exactly.
so it's weird to like you kind of you just run into walls constantly when thinking about stuff like this because longevity changes everything if we achieve it,
Yeah.
and I think we will.
So, what do you think is more powerful, longevity or or like getting more performance or compute power, then what we start doing just changes completely. Whereas if we're trying to layer in skills at the same speed over a long period of time, well, then things also change, so we don't know.
Well, the irony here is that we're just getting both at the same time. Like everything accelerates everything else. Like obviously the conversation we had last week was a bit about LK99. We're not. I've only heard one detraction from LK99 as far as like one good argument against it is that it's entirely likely that it's just diamagnetism. I can't remember it, but instead of flux locking, which is you can move the metal piece anywhere on the magnet and then it'll lock in place. And that's what you do when you cryogenically, not cryogenically, liquid nitrogen freeze these things, right? Mm-hmm. You can move it, you can turn the piece of material, and it'll just lock in place. But what you're seeing with the LK99 is that it locks back into a different place, or it locks back into the same place after you move it. But I think because it's tiny little shards, where only a tiny amount of the material itself is actually becoming the material that they want. So probably the rest kind of shards and falls away. That's why every piece of this material so far is in such a vastly different...
Very small.
Well, it's also a vastly different shape every time. It's because we don't have the refinement technique down. So even though that argument is good, as far as what we see so far, it may not be likely because eventually we're just going to get it down to like a block. We'll figure out exactly how to do it, and then you'll probably see it more commonly doing flux locking, because even within the shard, there's probably only a little piece that's working properly, and that's the part that locks into place. That's my opinion, at least.
Refinement to me doesn't seem like a very large hurdle, from what I understand of most chemical processes and creating things like that. It's just, we haven't really, we just kind of are starting to make this thing. And so being able to make it more refined is not really like, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's not like, it's not that big of a deal.
Well, no, my point earlier is that there's one, you missed a little bit of it, but there was one detractor that says it's just diamagnetism as opposed to flux locking.
Right.
Basically, the magnet fields are not. It's a different process that would be doing it, so thus it's not a superconductor. There's an argument for it. I would have to show you videos, but I understand it enough. I'm not like an expert in any way, so not saying I know.
You're
for
an
sure,
expert, got it.
No, but my point is just on my own like possible intuition. If it's actually any good, I think that more than likely that's not the case. We are going to get this technology, and if LK99 isn't it, we'll figure it out very soon, because we're already on the path. It shows like zero resistance within tests that we've done.
One
already.
thing that even if let's say it was all right, and it's not a superconductor, we've still managed to make something with magnetism out of materials that are not magnetic, which is still super. Like that's still really fucking impressive.
Yeah, the floating videos.
I think we did this
insane.
a while ago. There was another one a while ago. Maybe you guys heard of this. It was in the movie Back to the Future. Magnetism, I think it was. In the chat. The hoverboard.
The hoverboard. Okay. So what did we do a while ago? Oh, you're memeing. I was like, what?
Yeah.
What was the thing we did that I missed? What were you talking about?
Yeah, we had hoverboards, man.
Oh yeah, we were supposed to have what was it, like 2014 in the movies? I can't
15,
remember.
I think, yeah.
15, yeah.
But we got Twitter instead.
We're supposed to have sneakers that lace themselves too,
We do. They did actually.
We do have that.
They're
Velcro.
Velcro.
Those.
Yeah. Did you charge your shoes? Today? For that metal thing, I didn't look too much into it, but how far can you take it away from the position before it goes back there?
From one video I saw, pretty far in terms of its size, like up to like like 4 or 5 times its own size, you can move it away and it'll snap back to its original position. But it's also sitting above a pretty decent sized magnet compared to its size. But we're pretty much not going to know for a while whether or not like the exact properties of it, because it's still in the refinement phase. But there was one, I forgot the guy's name, but he did a paper on it, and basically the math for LK99 checks out and is a superconductor according to him. Like more,
there's a couple of simulations that were ran.
Yes.
And was
this from a particle? Was this from a particle simulator in Canada?
I don't know.
I want to say one of them was like Berkeley.
Okay.
It was like UB something National Lab. It was like the Berkeley National Institute National Lab, something like that. They ran a simulation where like the numbers and the math checks out. There are ways to make non-magnetic things magnetic, right? But they're sort of like loopholes and not necessarily like combining into a new structure from what I've been reading. So it's not like we've never done something, even if, the superconductor aside, like just the magnetism out of non-magnets, magnet materials. But they seem like they're all loopholes, like lasers, shooting lasers at it, contacting the surf to non-magnetic particles in an aqueous mixture with it seems like there's a lot of stuff around that, right? This would be the first time I think we ever just popped it together, and so even that's interesting.
Yeah, it's a very common material. So if we figure out the exact refinement technique, you probably have superconductors. And then I was looking into it as much as I could of like what advancements we get. It's even down to storage with superconductors. There's methods of storage that will be significantly denser. I don't know how much more we'd be able to store, but we have bigger hard drives now. You can store all the data on your.
I think that's what Elon Musk. I think that's what Elon Musk was doing. Originally, he was going to do a PhD at Stanford after he did like physics, and then he was going to do a PhD at Stanford. And I think that's what he was going to be working on.
Storage,
like energy storage with superconductors.
I should have specified. I meant data storage. You're right about energy storage as well, though. But
yeah. No, I heard you for the data stuff, but yeah, that's
okay.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know how that's going to progress, but but even we're making progress with lithium batteries, I think, too, for make denser packs, which is cool. But yeah.
Well, there's the 4680 cell. Like we're able to go away from a ton of the lithium that we previously needed for these types of things, as well as even just using iron cathodes, which is a big deal for supply. Ton of iron on Earth, like countless. You can't even like figure out how much we have, probably. But the point is that there's advancements already, and then we have like this thing coming in that could be extremely significant, and it's every day that goes on watching it is another day that someone has produced a result that's similar to what was described in the original paper. So then it comes down to like the alignment technique, and there's theories about it that it has a bit to do with like quantum physics and stuff. Now, I don't know enough to say about that, but that could be part of the reason that there are issues with it being replicated in certain areas until we figure out more. Is that what? Oh Jesus! But but there's the what's the point I'm trying to make? I just got off track by Miss Tokyo here.
Yeah, I got distracted.
Okay, but there's the fuck you. Because it's quantum, there could be this scenario where, depending on where you are on planet Earth it might literally matter where you're refining it or what orientation it's being refined in, because it relies on some degree of like quantum physics to actually work.
You got to quantumly untangle it.
Well,
whatever that means.
There's there was a computer chip manufacturer that had this bug with voting machines in Europe, I believe, and it was a specific RAM-based bug that was literally based on being too close to this particular radiation that was nearby the plant that was making these chips. So they had to change the way they were making the chips to stop this bug, because it was literally down to the radiation setting one of the on-offs to on instead of off, where it should have been in the default state. So it was creating like a surplus of.
They're rigging
votes.
Elections using quantum mechanics, is all I heard.
Yes. But my point is that they had this.
It's a lot cooler than stealing ballots, though. I wouldn't even be mad if someone rigged an election using quantum mechanics. I'd be like, you know what? Whoever you guys want to be president deserves it. They deserve it. This is a lot of effort.
Son of a bitch. You know, now that I think about it, you should probably be in charge. You with the fucking quantum computer. But the point is, we might be coming down to like we're gonna have to figure out a bunch of little things with why refinement techniques aren't working, and we'll get there. Basically, I think we'll probably, just based on, it's kind of an open source scenario, right? Where there's so many people that can just, there's no patent to any of this shit. It's just whoever figures it out first can start selling this shit, and that's probably going to be enough to do it.
I don't know enough about nukes to say that that's right or wrong. I haven't seen Oppenheimer, so my nuke knowledge isn't.
They said it with confidence, so it's probably right. That's how my mind works.
Or some shit. There we go. I believe it more now.
There we go.
No,
they're completely right about it. Well, we actually go to the bottom of the ocean to get metal. Did you know this? So there's certain.
Is that what they were doing?
There's certain medical equipment that all iron on Earth is effectively like radiated from us dropping nukes. So there's no iron on Earth that doesn't have this layer of radiation on it, except deep in the fucking ocean. So we go down to shipwrecks and grab the iron, and I think some steel. I don't know exactly, but we grab it because it's like pure metal. It's pre-nuke metal that we can use in very, very precise medical equipment. But there's also another example of this where someone was telling me, like, if LK99 is possible, that it's going to make a lot. It's not just MRIs. That's the big example people give, but there's a lot of specific equipment within even space that would be more efficient and accurate, far more accurate, because the conductant we're using is superior.
I just realized over time the brightness on me, I was turning into like a halogen bulb. I don't know what was going on. It's just I think there was some radioactive material on my end. It was just getting brighter, even though the sun's going down. My AR works off of quantum entanglement. My 357 Magnum. That's it's a quantum entanglement.
You know, there's a sci-fi gun that I always think about that, like, it's called Snap Rifle in Undying Mercenaries, right? And it has like literally thousands of just BBs in it, and then it, through a rail mechanic, just shoots them at the speed of like 3 times speed of sound, something like that, and just obliterates anything it comes into contact with. And you can shoot these things like thousands of times, and it penetrates most armors in the galaxy that's in. And it's like, how long before we're fucking each other up with that shit? Like, I wonder what, like, does LK99 have like possible, like, is that going to help us make Gauss rifles? You know, like a magnetic rifle that just,
If we can make it, I have a
there's
constitutional right to
someone
own one.
there's someone in the military right now licking their chops watching these videos. They can't
I have a
fucking wait.
constitutional right to own a Gauss rifle as an American. You can't take that away from me.
Man, that would actually be insane if we get to the point like you just red phosphorus, like it's in the oven with your sulfur and your nickel, or no, not nickel, your lead. That's the other one. You start cooking it, you create your little gauze rifle in your shack out in the woods, and you got your tank penetrating rounds. Basically, what I'm saying is, at some point, the pro America gun crowd has an argument.
Sir, is that a 300-foot Gauss rifle in your backyard? No, it's a kid's playhouse. Yeah.
Dude?
No, I think that's a 300-foot Gauss rifle. No, you have a warrant to make those assumptions. I need to see some paperwork before you start making those assumptions, because all I see is a really big children's swing set back there.
Okay, the nuclear expert here is saying that it would be absurd to do it. So no gauze rifle for you. Sorry, it's
It's
can't
over.
do it. Yeah, the Navy was actually. Did you guys ever see that? They were working on the gauze rifle or whatever the hell they were calling it. You ever seen it?
The Rudy Tooty Point and Shooty. I think that was the military's code name.
Yeah, they were making a railgun that had. It was really cool, actually. It was going so fast that it was like penetrating all these concrete barriers and stuff. But in theory, they would get to the point where they can use these things on ships. But the problem was they can't get it to reload without rebuilding the entire gun because it's so powerful. It just shakes it to death.
Yeah, that seems like an issue.
Yeah,
It's a one use.
I think Russia was.
I like the
that.
one, and I like the concept that's used in sci-fi, where you just put stuff up in space, and you're like, I'll drop it. I swear to God, I'll do it. I'll drop that big rock. I'll kill us all.
The problem with that is literally like a physics one of how expensive it would be to get a kinetic weapon into the air. It's so expensive per kilo to get something that would be the size we want. That's why you got to do it
like in Moon is a Harsh Mistress, where it's the moon people. The moon people are sending the rocks out.
Yeah, I see you read that book too.
Yeah, chucking rocks at them.
That one's probably got my favorite version of like AI future, where like the AI is just like submitting to the moon colony. They it just helps them. I think that's the more likely scenario. In general,
this is fun. I'll do this.
Yeah, my favorite concept that it. Oh, Jesus Christ, my favorite concept with that book is that they had explained something about the computer where it's not like a human. Where at one, I'm not clicking whatever that is. They explained that at one point, when he tells the computer to forget that he told it something, and it just deletes it from its hard drives. And he's like, a computer is different from a human because a human will always remember something that you need it to forget, or basically it can always betray you. But a computer will just literally delete it from its hard drive forever.
And a computer can do instantly what 15 years of therapy can do.
What?
Make you forget something?
Okay. Well, I think therapy's the opposite. You're sitting there remembering it the entire time, unless you're doing like...
What? Okay, don't analyze the joke. It was just...
Okay, fair. I'm being a curmudgeon.
No, you're right. The point of therapy is to talk about whatever's happened and then move on. But I thought it was funny. I thought it was a little ha hee hee.
I don't think therapy works. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah. I think that therapy works if you want it to work. I think it's like self-help books or anything else. I think it's like anything in life. Like, there are people who like it. It's very hard. Like, people who are like, well, like that. How do I put this? Introspection is like fucking impossible for 99% of the population. Like true introspection, understanding why they're doing the things that they're doing. They'll have a very surface level of an understanding, and then like if you say to them, um, they would never have the idea. Well, actually, the reason I'm angry is because X, Y, and Z. It's not that I'm angry. It's not that that just upsets me. It upsets me because it makes me feel like my place in this relationship or within society is not as stable as I thought. Like people are just like, they're never going to think at that level. Like human beings just don't. I've seen it a million times. They'll just be like, this really makes me mad. Why does it make you mad? Well, because it's wrong. Because it upsets me. Well, why does it upset you? They never go to that level. So like if your therapist is just like, that's so valid that you feel that way. Like, yeah, no shit. Of course, like the person who's angry has a reason for being angry 99% of the time. So, like, telling them that their feelings are valid, unless their specific thing is that they have guilt over feeling upset, which can happen sometimes. You can get mad about a situation and then be like, I shouldn't be mad about it and feel guilt. But most of the time, it's like, at least I think a good therapist is going to help you reflect on what are the key core reasons that are why you're starting to feel those feelings, right? So like if someone says to you like an offhanded joke and it makes you mad, but you get more mad than you should, well, why is it you're really getting angry like that? Okay, we can focus in on this now. We can see that you have an issue with this. And it's not like because in your childhood, like a lot, unless you have like really traumatic stuff, like that stuff usually isn't pertinent for the most part. And so then you can be like, okay, why do I feel that way? Well, that's not a logical way to think about it, and then stuff like that. So I've had like because I've done on and off therapy for a long time. I never had a bad therapist except for one. I went to one therapist. I mostly have male therapists. I went to one female therapist, and I was like, I can't do this. This is not working. It wasn't like a
Like,
respect thing. It was just like I just you
she doesn't know
don't
what
get
she wants for
you know
dinner. Why is she telling me anything?
like well it's more like a like I'd be like yeah, and it's just like when you're like fuck man, I just want to hit that person, and they're like what, and I was like I can't do this with you then. This is not this is not gonna work if you've
Okay, I
never
see what
looked
you
at
mean.
someone in a conversation and been like damn I kind of want to hit him in the face. Then we cannot, there's no basis for us to have this like interaction. So but I think like a lot of the problem is it's just like a self-help book, like it's like Jordan Peterson, right? Like no one's gonna sit and say when he's like, "Oh, if it's hard for you to go out there and conquer the problems of the world if your room is a mess." Like that's true. If your life in your internal life is a mess, it's harder for you to make a difference in the world. Like that's absolutely valid. Um, but if you need to hear that, if you don't get that at a base level, you're pretty fucked already. Like, and I'm glad that he's there for some
You,
people to help them realize that they need to like shower, clean their room, and have role models in organization. Some people need to hear that, but it's not like, oh my God, whoa, who would have known? These very basic, simple building blocks to being a human being are necessary.
yeah. So I think you're boiling it down to like the conversation we've had before, where not everyone's completely like conscious. Like, not everyone's capable of self-reflection. That there's
Yeah, well,
degrees of.
most people are. I would say that I'm not capable of self-reflection a lot of
I've
times
noticed.
because you just go, you're just you're stuck in your daily habits and stuff, and you're doing the things that you've been doing and you're comfortable doing it and you don't know why you're doing it anymore. It's just what you do. It's just how you operate. It's your modus operandi. That's just you as a person. And you have to have someone be like, why are you doing it that way? And you're like, I don't know why I'm doing it that way.
There
That's
was an
just how I've always
author.
done it.
There's an author that wrote. I think it's like The Elephant in the Room or something like that. It's a whole book about. I never bothered to read it, but I heard like enough of like the synopsis to give a vague idea. But the idea is that you're there's so much automated stuff in your body that to change any part of you takes astronomical amounts of circumstances or self steering to actually change yourself in any way. At some point, every thing that it's pretty nihilistic, right? So it's like everything that you've done to like change yourself, say you've improved your life in a significant way, it's all some sort of story that you tell yourself for something your brain wanted to do anyways, or was already doing. It's like it gets into like the free will arguments, but basically you're just this computer with this base level programming that you don't really have a whole lot of choice. So I think that's why
That happens.
I think that's why it's like you argue on like minutia, right? Where lifting weights and getting into shape and stuff makes your life better, right? Undeniably, for most people, it makes their life better unless they go into like severe amounts of PED use and like kill themselves for shit nobody cares about, or at least, you know, depending on like the level of athlete we're talking about here. But what's happening there is that your body is changing like chemically, so your motivations and stuff change. So that would be like the healthy body, healthy mind argument that most people make. So, I mean, there's even like the more muscle you get on your body, there's a significant amount of these like happiness hormones or something like that they call them, that are just constantly released through your body. Like it cheers you up to be stronger, just physically. So, but the point is like you start making that effort, and then that's the mechanism by which your mind starts to change and your life changes. So getting into better anything. So opening like different neural pathways and stuff like that. So you might not necessarily be in control, but being consistent and doing something changes your life, and that's the mechanism through which you change your life.
Well, that's why I think the outside perspective is valid. That's why I think that's the only validity I think that comes from therapy is the external perspective. And like the problem is and like a place where you have like a really tight knit community, you wouldn't probably need that. But we don't really. You have kind of people that you know, right? But the problem is everyone, at least all my peers that are men in their mid, early to late 20s, are all pretty depressed.
Okay.
So I'm like, so how do you be happy? And they're like, oh, you do that? And I'm like, yeah, like I'm pretty happy. I like my life. They're like, really? Really? Like you don't just suffer through every day? I was like, no, I'm pretty satisfied with my life. I'm pretty happy. They're like, so you don't just like think about like ending it all like 5 times a day? I'm like, no, that's not really. No, I don't do that. And I'm like, is this like common among everyone? So like clearly we need people on the internet.
Okay.
Everyone on the internet.
When I was younger, I was only surrounded by that type of mentality. I was like just deep into the video game culture, and that's all you're dealing with is like people who just don't leave their house all day. I still have this problem, but maybe it's not a problem for now. Probably bite me in the ass in a few years. But the point is you're surrounded by your environment, and you are your environment to some degree. There's arguments like there's an old like saying where like wherever I went, there I was, right? Like you're always yourself wherever you go. But I think that if you're acting as if in that new environment and like improving yourself, then you're gonna have a better life. And the problem with what you're talking about is there's this genuine like nihilism is everywhere. It's in the water you drink. It's in the food you eat. Like everything you do like nihilistically. You become.
I think you mean to say microplastics.
Yeah. You know, I actually want to try to contact Brian Johnson because I think that guy is so damn autistic with his giant medical team that he would probably be the guy that would be like, yeah, this microplastic shit is real or it's fake. Because I hate like thinking about the microplastics things, because at some point I've said this before, but you're wearing wooden slippers and you're naked all day, like it just like try not to touch anything, because that's all you can do at some point if you're trying to avoid any sort of BPA. Basically the floor is lava. That's what you're playing with the rest of your life if you take that stuff seriously.
Floor, the walls, your shirt.
It might be true for the record. I have no idea, but I think we need to like
breathing in microplastics.
You need to move into like some mud hut somewhere.
Yeah.
You can't even be Bubble Boy because they'd make the bubble out of fucking plastic.
No, mud hut.
Yeah, you'd be Mud Hut Boy.
Mud Boy.
Yeah, mud boy.
They just make a big mud circle around you.
Smearing it on you to keep the plastic.
Sir,
There it is.
we've found out that there's a trace amounts of plastic in all mud on Earth. There's nothing we can do to
There's
escape.
nothing we can do.
The sun is made of plastic. It's so over.
There's a
but like
really...
that's you were.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was gonna say you were talking about we make up reasons for why we do stuff, and I know we always bring this thing up with the split brain experiment. But my favorite one is when they'd be like, "Why do you have that ball in your hand?" And they just make up some shit. They'd be like, "Oh, I liked playing baseball as a kid or whatever," and that's not the reason at all because they're telling one side of the brain to do something, and then when they show the other side of the brain, that they can't. The two sides of the brain can't communicate, so they tell the left side of the brain basically, do something and pick up that object. Then they ask the right side, which is like the audible side, maybe it's the other way around. Why are you holding that? Instead of saying, because you told me to, it just fabricates something. And the person truly believes that's why they're holding it.
The origin of GPT hallucination is the brain's like that too, apparently. There's one part of it that just has no idea what's going on, and the other part actually does. So you hallucinate why you have the baseball in your hand. It's like, okay, well, a person who has a baseball obviously likes it, so I'm going to say that I like it. And that's what happens.
Baseball good.
Baseball good.
So hypothetically, if this was a simulation, the guy who programmed it, he was trying to patch these glitches. He's like, yeah, just make that shit up.
Just make something
there's a hole here.
Just make something up.
Yeah.
It's what it is like? Is it called interpolation in images? I can't remember what it's called. There's some thing in imaging where it just starts making up shit that looks good enough. Most of your vision's like that. Like
if
your
X can't
vision,
be found, substitute value via this differential equation. That's basically what happens.
Well,
if you can't find a reason, then the brain has this little algorithm it goes through to make up one.
Most of your vision isn't real. The peripheral vision is all made up by your fucking brain.
Yeah.
Most
it's
of it
actually
is
pretty cool. Because you have high resolution, this small area in focus, and everything else is just micro. It's
a lot of VR. But a lot of VR stuff is exploring that now because you can give you the fullest quality stuff right in your retina, and then the rest of it can be just kind of bullshit that gets rendered in when you look over to it, because your eyes are so good at making shit up that it's perfect. We can abuse it. 40 minutes of every day of yours is not seen, despite your eyes being open the entire time. It's when you blink. There's a moment where it's rendering stuff that doesn't exist technically. It just has a screenshot of that. And then when you quickly look anywhere with your eyeballs, basically if your eyes just live streamed you looking when your eyes move quickly, because unless you're tracking something with your eyes, that's the only time that your eyes are smooth.
That's two types of eye movement. Yeah.
When your eyes are smooth, or when you're tracking something, but when you're looking at things, your eyes snap to different locations. That snapping would make you fucking sick if it just streamed that to you because it's so quick. So your eyes kind of make up that motion. With
it's really hard to do.
Yeah.
But something that's really interesting about that eye movement. So that's why if you're on drugs or you're drunk, your eyes won't be smooth. But something that I used to practice doing is imagining something, not hallucinating it, but imagining something and then getting my eyes to move in that motion and follow something that's not there. It's actually really fucking difficult because your eye only wants to visually move that way when there's an actual object. But if you focus really hard, you can. It's very difficult to do. You have to concentrate. Very difficult. But you can make your eyes move in that way by pretty much I guess picturing that there's some a paper airplane or something.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The different eye movement stuff's very interesting. I always thought.
But yeah, the main point is that your brain's constantly making shit up. So we can do a lot with VR because of that, and there's all sorts of arguments that go into simulation theory at that point, with even parts of simulation theory that are argued is that the reason that time slows when you get close to a giant mass or a black hole is there's too much shit to render on the screen, so the game slows down.
Stuttering.
So there's weird shit like
your
that.
GPU.
The universe doesn't have a big enough GPU running the sim. So we have to cut,
That explains a
costs.
lot of the people.
Oh God! You ever heard those theories that like when you can't sleep, it means the server's full. You can't get in. Too many people are sleeping in that moment.
That's funny. I see a lot of people that I'm like, yeah, there's something wrong with the CPU, the GPU, like the RAM's messed up. They like try to download more RAM off a website. Clearly, I had one of those in the parking lot today. I was going to Walmart, and this person stops in the middle of the intersection because of someone who was at a stop sign. So they're like pull into Walmart. They get into the middle. They go past their stop sign. Everyone else does too. We're driving. There's someone who's at a stop sign, and they stop for them, even though they don't have a stop sign. They still stop for this person, and it's this way. The arrows say this way. They wait for that person. Then they go down the wrong way, and then they start cutting across the entire parking lot through all, you know what I mean? So the parking lots, the spaces are like this, and you have the lanes like this. They're just going like this. They almost hit someone. So I'm like, okay, I'll go down 2 spaces. I'll go down 2 rows so I'm not next to them. I start going down the road. I look over there. Here they are coming up on me, about to hit me. And I honk my horn. And then the lady's just like, oh, what? Why are you honking your horn at me? And I park, I get out, I'm walking towards the front of Walmart, and she's coming back around circling at the front. And so I flip them off, and I scream some things at them.
So I fucking flipped her off, right?
So I flipped her off. I said some expletives, and then Jasmine was like, don't yell. Please don't yell. It's not nice to yell. I was like, no, they deserved it. They, like, cut across the whole parking lot just to circle around 2 more times. Like, what are you trying to do? And there's tons of empty spaces. Like, no one's there. That's the other thing. There's like tons. It's not like, oh, it's full. They're looking for a spot. There's literally like the first row spots are open. They pass those up. They start coming back down again. Mind blowing. GPU cooked. They actually they don't have a GPU. They're running on like a
Internal
NVIDIA.
graphics.
They're like a
Yeah,
NVIDIA
built-in
110.
CPU graphics.
Sometimes when I'm talking to you, Johnny, I feel like I'm talking to some stranger that I just met at a gas station who just starts going on a rant about some shit that happened earlier. Like that's how it feels with you sometimes.
They got an E machine. They got a fucking E machine in their head. They're running Windows 98 on an E machine. They really believed when they said the last computer you'll ever need, you can upgrade this forever. They really believed that.
Listen, I agree that like there's a lot of people like this, and you can run into them in parking lots, and they might run into you. But I don't know. I don't know where to go after that. My brain's a little fuzzy.
Things like that make me believe simulation makes sense. Like I see shit like that in the wild, and I'm like, yeah, simulation theory.
Well,
there it is.
I mean, I guess, right? But there's all sorts of like biodiversity basically within the animal kingdom. So there's different layers of intelligence on everything. So if you believe in anything about like the IQ stuff, then there's tons of fucking people all in between on the spectrum of that, and that's kind of what you're dealing with. You're just dealing with a layer of like this person's processor speed is this, and that's what they have to deal with, and you have to deal with them too. There's
Please,
even theories.
Neuralink.
There's even theories
ASAP.
of, yeah, I know. There's even theories of like past a certain, I think it's a standard deviation above an IQ, you can no longer be friends with someone because they're too stupid for you to deal with. Like that becomes, it's hard for you to. Is that
like 2 standard deviations?
No, I think it's like a single.
3? Oh fuck, that explains a lot.
Yeah. So if you're only like, I don't know, it's like 10 points or 15 points above someone in IQ, it's very hard for you to be friends with them. This is apparently a phenomenon.
That's really depressing. I don't like hearing that. I don't think that's real.
Well,
I'm ignoring this. I don't know, because that's not, and I'm not like jerking myself off over here, but there are people that I know that are just not smart that I think are just great people. They're just, but I'm not really friends with them either.
Johnny.
Oh, that's terrible. That's not. That's horrid. But there's some simple, like, just simple country
my
folks
dog
out there.
is simple as it gets, and I love that little guy. He's
Don't
funny.
compare him to a dog.
Listen, all I'm saying.
Jesus. I was trying to be gentle with what I was saying, and you're like, yeah, they're basically like my pet dog, huh?
Hey, man, like it's just a pet dog with more tricks it can do. If you think about it.
Some of them maybe more tricks, some of them maybe less.
But yeah, it's something I did want to talk about. By the way, is how much are you guys met with like optimism or nihilism on like a daily basis in
general?
your interactions?
Nihilism constantly. Even when I worked at the state senate, the senators are like, "Yeah, it's fucked," and I'm like,
"Do you
"What?"
think that's a product of just economy, or because like basically there's so much shit to hope for in the future that we can see happening now, right? Like every day there's a new advancement in something. Why aren't you hopeful? And is that like literally just I don't know. I ordered a pizza the other day and I wanted to shoot somebody, to be honest. So I can see a bit of the nihilism, right? Where I'm just like, I looked at like the older order
because
from, like,
of the price.
Yes, I looked at the older order from like 3 years ago, and I paid 3 times the amount for the same order, and my brain just I was so angry. And the anger subsided after the pizza got inside of me, but that's another story. But
you should have said when I saw the price, because I just thought you're like, yeah, I was eating a baked potato the other day and I thought about killing somebody, and it's like,
well,
why?
Because of the price. It was why I
Because
thought
of the
about
price.
killing
Okay,
somebody.
that makes.
But
okay, that makes sense.
the pizza itself
Understandable.
did not do that. The pizza was good. It was delicious.
I was eating that pizza and I was like, son of a bitch. I'm
Listen,
so angry.
The point I'm making is like most people day to day they're dealing with this problem, which is like the food's expensive now, right? They're not making enough money to offset the amount of inflation on food. So the general aura is most people are dealing with their day to day. They don't give a fuck about the future. They're dealing with the now. So you're met with nothing but nihilism. In
the inflation wasn't as big of an issue in 2020, and so like, and I've been seeing this since like 2014 and before, I would say. But obviously that's just because of an age thing. I'm sure if I was older, I'd have been seeing it sooner.
I'm not narrowing
like,
it down to inflation. I'm saying it's
like,
a bigger aspect now of why you see so many people extremely nihilistic, like because they're coming.
But these aren't like your average Joes that I've heard be very nihilistic. I've crossed paths with people who are very like I said, like elected officials at like a state and a federal level, and I'm like, yeah. So I mean, what do you think like in the future? They're like, yeah, it's pretty much just fucked, isn't it? And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa! You don't get to say that. I'm supposed to think that in the back of my head and smile and wave anyways. I'm the one who's like, it's all gonna burn down. We elected you. You can't say that to me. You're supposed to say, "Oh, we'll get it fixed out. I've got 40 years of experience in politics and in governance, and we've been through worse." And you're like, "Yeah, man, this is the worst I've ever seen it. Yeah,
Well,
it's pretty bad, isn't it?"
Well, that's
no.
Every generation has a doomsday theory that everything's going to die. We're all fucked. Every generation has this. I mean, when I was younger, I was scared of the 2012 thing or whatever it was, right? Like the Mayan calendar, it says we're going to die. And then like a few short years later, there's some new thing in the Bible, a new revelation. We're all going to die. We're all going to die. We're all going to die. Every fucking generation or decade even, there is some new woe that this is what's going to kill us all. This is finally going to kill us all. Now we're dealing with a lot of people think AI is going to do that, right? The robot uprising. But my general point,
robots.
My general point is that this is like a constant thing that you're always fighting, no matter what generation, time, or decade you're in. There is a massive group of people that thinks everything's going to fucking end, and they find some goddamn excuse for it. And it never happens. Humanity is still here forever. Until further notice, we're stuck with ourselves. So it's very strange to deal with like nihilistic people, is my point. But at what point?
But I think that there is declines in empires. Like I think that's true, and I think that for as far as the U.S. empire is going, I think you'd be sort of delusional to say that the United States as an empire or a nation or as a hegemonic state to say that it's not in decline. I think that would be a
Well,
little bit silly, just due to the economic factors, social factors, instability within the different groups within the U.S. Like that's all like easily trackable instances of this, polling stuff like
yeah.
that. So there's a difference between like humanity is fucked and then like the general area surrounding me is fucked. Like the whole like the general area surrounding me is fucked. I feel like that is a pretty apt understanding of the current political climate. But just to say like, oh, the future's fucked for everybody, I think that's doomerism and nihilism kind of seeping in.
Well,
Yeah, and also
oh, go ahead.
if just one, yeah, and just because one empire is no longer dominant doesn't mean it's going to like it doesn't
Yeah.
disappear necessarily. But I agree with you on the social and the economic aspect. But even on the decline, there could still be 50 years until there's a clear other comer up that's taken over. But I
Yeah,
think we'd be fooling ourselves if we said we were on the rising half of the U.S. Empire.
Thucydides
Well,
trap
the point
is
I'm
what it's
making
called.
here, for the record,
Yeah.
on like a counter to that. I mean, it's not a counter, but the point is like it doesn't really matter in like the long term whether or not America like stays alive. But more than
Yeah.
likely, we'll probably have some balkanization event that goes on. You know, people are always in different states talking about receding. Probably happen at some point. Eventually, you will get the will to do it, like the political will. You will have like American versions of, I guess, Brexit, right? But that didn't quite pan out because they're doing a lot of the shit that the EU does anyways. But
Wants to do anyways. So yeah, they didn't even really
so
get away from it.
my general point is that you probably will get the political will for some states in the United States to secede and all that, but it's not going to cause this mass instability that like collapses everything, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of power fantasy. I don't think it's necessarily not, because I think people always misconstrue sort of like collapse is nihilism, but I don't think it's nihilism. I think most of the people that feed into that, it's more of actually a power fantasy, because, and it's also the fact that we need stuff. We need stuff going on, and if you're just doing the same shit all the time, that's very boring. Um, so like if it all goes south and oh, there's gonna be this stuff going on and it's gonna be really intense and oh my goodness, I'm getting all this dopamine and I gotta be out there fighting off battalions of roving gangs. Like a lot of people hear that and it's like the little dopamine receptor goes off, the little monkey picture, neuron activation, just like straight neuron activation. Just
well,
is this a warm Dr. Pepper? Okay.
you know the original
It's
reason.
flat.
You know the original reason that they even started carbonating the sodas was, right?
No.
It's because Dr. Pepper and like Coca-Cola was invented before refrigeration was common. So the bubbliness made it so that it felt like a cool drink tactilely to your mouth. I'm fucking serious. That's why the carbonation started.
I believe you. So I think that's one misconception is the unhappiness in life has led to people wanting these sort of things, not necessarily nihilism. I guess you could say the basis is in nihilism because they're unhappy, but it's more they just want something different and they want something that they understand. And life and death is the simplest thing. Any sort of life and death situation is far more easy for the human mind to comprehend than, you know, the stresses of your job or the economy. Like violent life and death situation, that to me, like that's super easy. That's not a complicated structure to figure out. And so I think people just want simplicity with that. And like bread and circuses, Roman Colosseum. That's to distract me from everything else. I see two people fighting to the death. That's simple. Two guys walk in, one guy walks out.
Well,
Yeah, they put on the shows also in the Coliseum to keep the people occupied. I think that's the same thing with sports too, you know? I think anyway.
you think that's
To
the point of
keep,
Netflix?
Yeah. Well, no. It also it's a programming machine, man. It's a propaganda
I know,
machine.
I know. But
I think on one hand, people are always like bread and circus is bad, but it's like
what do you do with all the people?
we have the best bread and circuses fucking ever.
That's
Okay?
true. You ever
The
watch Breaking Bad?
best.
It's fun.
The best bread and circuses man could ever conceive. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? We couldn't have like it's not necessarily a bad thing. You need distractions from the stresses of life. The idea that oh, there's just too much shit going on is somewhat correct. I think there is a little information overload. But if you're some farmer in the BCE era, you know what I mean? What are you going to do to relax? You're going to get drunk. You're going to get drunk and you're going to watch two guys beat the shit out of each other. So it's not like technology did this. Like, no, that's bullshit. Like, it doesn't matter if it was a 2,000, 3,000 years ago or 25 minutes ago. What makes me relax is drinking a couple beers and watching two guys beat the shit out of each other. Like, that's just human nature. It doesn't have to be that, but maybe watching like a play or whatever, it's normal stuff
I get
too.
your
Not
point.
just the.
I've just been having like a decent amount of conversations with various people with like leveling of nihilism, but most of it comes from like a post-scarcity point that I think most people think of, where one of the ones is like arguments with someone with like the longevity thing, right? I've had this a decent amount, and their basic idea is a fucking movie idea or a book idea, where the idea is that the only people that get longevity are the richest people there are. The problem with that narrative, that's the only way they can see the future.
Someone would do something about that.
The only way they see that mentally is from stories we've told each other, right? Where the technology is going to be so expensive for longevity that only the richest people can do it, or there's some way that they make it so they're the only people that can do it. The problem with that is you're going to be able to tell, like, hey, this guy's been around 200 years. What's in your basement, right?
Because
But just to finish the point, the longevity, as far as we know right now, it's a fucking cocktail that you can create in your garage. This has been confirmed by David Sinclair as far as what we think is the most likely scenario to reset the age. He says a high school student will eventually be able to do it in their kitchen. No problem. It's just a cocktail.
I think the other issue with that is like in a scenario where the elites are doing that, and they make sure that they're the only ones that live. There's a lot of mentality wrapped up in that. That's important to sort of break, because that's the thing about like conspiracy theories, right? Like when the vaccine thing, the vaccine, they're killing everyone off. That's what that is. I'm like, well, that doesn't really make any sense.
And then it didn't happen, by the way. Like everyone's still
because why would you get rid of all the people that are like, sign me up, I'm ready, government, whatever you want, stick me with it? Why would you get rid of those people? And so in the same vein of that, not to say that there weren't issues or what have you, right? Not to say that there's not room for debate in the efficacy of stuff. There absolutely is. But you have to say, is this logically sound and logically consistent? It's like the whole flat earth thing. Why would they keep that from us, right? There's no logical consistency. And so on the thing of the elites are just going to keep it from us, the only way they'd be able to do that is if they hid themselves from the public eye. Otherwise, everyone would notice they're 200 years old, they're 300 years old, and then people would catch on. And this idea that these elites are these evil people, which almost everyone believes, left wing, right wing, centrists, communists, fascists, Marxists, socialists, everyone's like the elites are bad, evil people. Well, what is something we know about bad, evil people with power is they like to use it and they like to get gratification from it. And so it's very hard to get that gratification unless you're in the public eye. They want to be known, they want to be seen, and they like that. So they can't just sit on some island somewhere. Like that's the thing about like Epstein was not a household name, right? Jeffrey Epstein was not. Everyone was like, "Oh, but how many photos of him with rich and powerful and famous people are there?" Right? Tons, because he wanted to be he wanted to be a socialite. They all want to be socialites. You're going to find very few people who have that level of power and are abusing that power who do not want to integrate and mingle with the socialites. So they're always going to be found out. Hey, this guy's 500 fucking years old. What's going on here, guys?
But basically, my general point here, you're muted, by the way, Lex, but my general point here is that you you don't have the ability to keep most technology from the masses, especially if it's easy to replicate. That's another problem. And it will be easy to replicate. And we know this from every bit of technology now, that if you gave to a king at any point in the past a cell phone, if you gave it to a king in the past, you got a calculator on there, right? Like, you could do serious stuff with the technology. Arguably, the cell phone itself should have only been for the most powerful people in the world to talk to just each other, right? Anywhere on the globe. If they could have had that scenario, they would have, right? Like, but it's just not. It's not how any technology advances at all. Part of what you're going to do with like longevity is there's going to be several different versions of this drugs, and some of it's going to kill random people, more than likely, right? There's going to be some cancer that replicates infinitely in the body when you take it. That happens in a rare set of people, and some rich people are going to find that out before us. It is the usual with all this stuff and how it goes. And the general point is that you're not going to be able to keep such a technology closed source forever. It is eventually going to be released to the public by someone who has the ability to. And go ahead.
Well, I think it's important to break down the other doomerism of longevity, and that is the elites. Again, it's a very common theme when it comes to doomerism and technology. That's like it always starts with the people in control, the elites, etc. Well, longevity, yeah, they're going to give it to all of us so we can be wage slaves forever.
Oh yeah, they can find an excuse for why it's going to be bad for you.
They don't want you. You suck at your job. I suck at my job. We're lazy. We make mistakes. They do not want us to work forever. That is a nightmare for people. Middle managers are the most sad, upset people in the universe, okay? Because they have to deal with, all the workers. And the workers are like, fuck that. I'm not trying that hard today. You know what I mean? Like, I go clean that mess up. I pretty much cleaned it up for the most part. I did a pretty decent job. I did okay. Okay, I didn't even clean it up. Like, that's like most workers I meet. They're not bad people, but they're not 100% efficient. Why do you want that forever? Like, they don't want you. No one wants that. In a company's ideal world, they would get rid of the human component completely, and it would just all be automated. They don't want to have to deal with, someone who's now racked up infinite retirement funds.
Well, the crux of what you're kind of talking about, though, real quick, the crux of kind of what you're talking about is that no matter what reality you find yourself in, they will find a reason that this is bad. Oh, you're going to live forever so you can be a slave now. Like, the second, like, everyone starts getting longevity technology, they're extending your life so that you're forever a puppet.
They're going to make you... They're going to punch you in the face for 1,000 years, make you smell farts. Like, what?
What's the...
It's going to suck.
What's the ancient... the story of the guy who he gets his liver eaten every day when he wakes up?
That's Prometheus.
Prometheus, yeah. that's what we're all headed for.
He granted humans technology. He granted us fire.
Yeah, so the point is that, like... At some point, they're going to be on the other side of that argument where they're just going to be nihilistic while they're going to be sitting next to me 200 years from now, assuming like you make it, right, to the escape velocity of longevity. You're still going to have a damn reason that the elites are doing X, Y, and Z, and that's why they kept my stupid ass around for another 100 years, right?
Well, and they might be, right? And I'm not going to sit here and deny the fact that people with power misuse power. Like, that's a constant. That's since we picked up a club and bashed another dude in the head with a club, and he's like, "Me chieftain," like he was abusing that shit immediately. When he realized he could pick up a big stick and hit another guy with a big stick, he's like, "By the way, you're all under. You need to go forage for me. I get to have 4 wives. None of you get to have any. This is how this works now. It's for everybody's own good." But that's not really the point. The point isn't to escape from that entirely. The point is what is going to allow the betterment of the average person, right? We already know that there's always going to be people that are risen above due to circumstance, due to family, due to just happenstance. To sit and to focus and to worry on that is detracting from the future that we can have as your average person.
I think people
I
also
think.
have a misconception of like rich people and like people in power is that like with the exception of a few families, most billionaires today, none of them were billionaires in the past, right? It went through
Hmm.
some generational thing where like there's one man or whatever that changed the path of that family. And because he had X amount of money, his kids, especially the ones that like become successful and all that, right? Because Bezos is an example of that, right? His family was. It's not something where he's like this long lineage of extremely rich people. Maybe they were intelligent
The
in some way.
Waltons.
It's not like it's not how things work. Eventually, someone comes along, and we're playing the game of capitalism, which isn't very fucking fair for anyone. But there are people that know how to win it, and that's what you get is people who come
Well,
in to
that's
play
why
to win, and that's the
in the early
person.
1900s, there's the big split between old money and new money, and that was a big issue. In the early 1900s, the economy's booming. You have inventors, you have people making these companies, and now all of a sudden they're becoming these massive wealthy people. When before, pretty much families owned like banking institutions, they owned lending institutions, they owned like certain very old companies. They were part of royalty, so that those people were very wealthy. You had and some other sort of families that were in those sort of like maybe some merchant guilds, things like that, family merchant guilds.
Mhm.
All those people were wealthy. 1800s, 1900s comes along, we start having companies people make themselves, and they're like, ugh, okay, you have 5 times my wealth, but ugh, your new money, there's no prestige behind that, get away from me.
That's why a lot of people, even before like Trump ran for office, like people didn't like him within like the elite circles because he was the guy with gold on everything. He's like the new money guy that no one gives a shit about. Like he's just that dork, and that was kind of
Hmm.
like the elite consensus of the guy before obviously the state we're in now with him. But the point is that is something that happens frequently is there's the new money constantly comes in, and now you have so
Hmm.
many people that are just rich off of they sold their $500 million startup, right? And even more
Yeah.
like Notch is an example where he's instantly I think he's worth 3 billion now. He made Minecraft, right? That
Yeah,
was
yeah. Well,
what he did with his time.
here's the thing.
Notch is controlling the political system.
This and the simulation. No, and that's the thing. As technology progresses, it becomes more feasible for like a single generation for a person to just suddenly accumulate that much. But I think that's a misconception. A lot of people think that those people are all evil, but they're often just a bigger cog in the machine. Like they just, you know,
Yeah,
still
Yeah,
a
I think
cog,
the
but just
same
a bigger
thing
cog in the
with
machine.
generations. People do the
I
same thing
think
with
some of them are
generations as well.
undeniably evil for the record, but there's a decent amount where it's just some guy who figured something out and he made himself into something bigger than his father was, and that's a constant theme with like the current zeitgeist of the world is that you really can bring your pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but it's not quite like that, but if you're ambitious enough, you will go somewhere in life.
Well, the problem is you see the exact same mentality when like Zoomers or millennials talk about like older people. They're like, why are they like that? Why do they want me to just pull myself up by my bootstraps? Or like the boomer will be like, why is it that you guys are all depressed and this? And they're like, why do you not care about this? It's like the Zoomer will self reflect, not really self reflect. They'll at least be like, well, I'm like this because society is this way and you made it that way. It's like, are you sure they made it that way? Or is it possible that it's just been that way and they're also a product of their environment, as is the generation before them, just as much as we're a product of our environment? So the reasons why we do things to them that they're like, you guys are lazy, you don't care, this, and this, and we will not take blame for that. We will absolutely skirt that blame. We'll say, that's not our fault. It's because society made me this way, but we can't accept the same answer from them. We refuse to admit that it's possible that they're just a normal person that was born into a certain set of circumstances that lived their life a certain way because of those circumstances, and now we're at a crossroads with them. Like, it
So-
seems like that people can't grasp that.
Yeah, I think we're at a crossroads of like scarcity mindset and post scarcity mindset is ultimately what we're dealing with here on like nihilism, especially because there are at least 3 or 4 companies now that their goal is something like 1 billion humanoid robots by the next 10 years, right? So 2 of them that I know of specifically have humanoid robots. They both have the explicit. There's probably a market for having roughly 10 billion robots in the world. Most people are going to have some sort of Figure AI. That's the one of them that I'm talking about. But they have this. We're going to have not only in most industrial settings, there's going to be a ton of humanoid robots running around doing real work, but people in their own house are going to want one. And at some point, like, I had this argument with someone where they're thinking, well, that's only going to be for the elites. I'm not going to be able to have one of those in my house. It's not going to do much for me. But meanwhile, a cell phone used to cost like $10,000 in a car, right? But now you have something just 20 years later that you buy for $1,000, and it is so much more powerful than anything the richest people in the world 30 years ago could have ever imagined. Significantly better technology. So you're headed towards this. Yeah, I saw that. The Rob the robot. But you're headed towards a position where these robots are going to get significantly more powerful as far as what they can do for you, and significantly more cheaper. There is no other world that we're going to have going forward here, because eventually these robots are going to be capable enough to build themselves. And once you get to the point where they're able to, in every sector of the manufacturing process where there is a stopgap where you would need a human or a humanoid, you have a robot instead. What that means is that 10 billion number is probably low. Like, there's going to be probably significantly more robots running throughout the world doing who knows what. You have technologies on the rise that might happen, which is the superconductor, that makes the battery for them last 24 hours a day, and the charging's instant. You're outcompeted on every level on work. So what that means is the economy fundamentally shifts from that point on to humans are using their brain power to make robots or whatever thing that they're running, and that is your economic contribution, is organization in general. Some sort of either capital organization, physical organization with robotics, or mental organization with social stuff, because we're probably always going to have some degree of social stuff, even with synthetic AI personalities entering the space. There will always be humans interacting, in my opinion. So my general point is that, like, there is this narrative that people always consistently will tell themselves in this, because they, in their minds, they can't picture a position where they have a different choice, where the elites are always the elites and we're always the lumpenproll who have nothing good. But they don't understand the things that they have that are good, that a rich person of any point in the past 30 years would have been jealous of.
Right.
So that's my general point.
Well, everything's bad all the time.
Everything's bad
and
all the
anyone who
time.
says otherwise is not, they're wrong.
There's no future. Everything's going to suck. The price of houses is going to go to infinity, because that's obvious, right? Like, you dumb fuck.
Everyone has to be sad. You don't get to be happy. Anything good that happens is a nothing burger. There's no superconductor. There's no new technology. It's not really even AI. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah. It's It reminds me of griefers in Minecraft. When I was a kid, I used to play a lot of Minecraft, and you'd be building this damn thing on like some creative world or something. Some bastard comes in and auto clicks the whole damn thing down, you know. And my friend
We call
told
those people seagulls.
my friend told me then that very wise for his age when he said it, but it's easier to destroy than it is to build anything, and that's the easy option is to be nihilistic.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you see it everywhere. Is people are just going with the easiest thing I can do is say this all sucks and I'm not a winner because of it's there's always a state where I'm going to be a loser because I wasn't born into winning, even though that's just not necessarily how it works. So I wonder how attitudes will change when, because you could picture a scenario where most people can, like you know the power washing businesses that people make. Not that easy. You can make a lot of money with it, depending. It's probably pretty saturated now, but in the scenario that people are going to find themselves in the future, is that you can buy some robots, right? You can get these robots and go have them do tasks or services and make money with that, and you don't have to manage your own motivations. Like you just have these robots that just go do work. They go mow lawns, whatever thing you can imagine. I can picture a scenario where like humans kind of just become the autonomous. They're the benefactor of the autonomous agents, where they can make a life for themselves just by owning things like that. And I think that's where you head to like post scarcity pretty quickly, because generosity would only grow. I think you're seeing like a big part of like the generous like future that we're seeing is there's a lot more to the economy now. Like even though we're in like shitty situations now, there are a ton of people on Twitch and YouTube and stuff where they've made a ton of money just off of patronage, where you entertain me, I pay you, right? That's a big part of the economy right now, is people subscribing to their favorite Patreon artist, right? That does like cool art or something to that effect that they like, and people make a living off of stuff like that. And when you increase the level of like economy for everyone, then you're probably going to see a significant amount more of this style of people making a living off of something that makes them unique or whatever. Or basically all aspects of the economy just are going to constantly be in some weird flux, but the economy is just going to keep going up because the capital is pretty much dictated by the amount of labor in the force, in my opinion. So robotics are fundamentally going to change how most people think about their life and how far things can go. AI will temporarily take a lot of like white collar jobs, but I think there's plenty of things that we'll be going towards with all this.
I can dig a hole, baby.
Okay.
You said white collar jobs.
No.
Blue collar jobs. You know what I mean? I can dig a hole. You know what I mean? There's always labor out there to be done. Always labor to be done. Always labor.
I like the background.
Yeah, very nice.
It's very purple.
Is that what? What's the Discord thing called? Wumpus.
Wumpus? What?
Their mascot.
It is Wumpus. Yes. It's the peach fucking Red Bull.
Very nice. I just picked up a pack. Two things. We call those in the like. Go ahead. Very nice.
You gotta. This is the only flavor that matters. And people are sleeping on it. They don't even know it exists.
He's obsessed with this peach Red Bull, by the
way. Coconut is the bomb.
Decent.
The coconut.
Close second.
The coconut's really good. The
winter edition,
dragon fruit, dragon fruit, the winter edition. I think it's the not the
Fig
green,
apple,
but like
fig apple.
Yeah, fig apple is really good. I actually have not hated a single one. What have you tried? The new one, the new summer.
Which is what? Yeah, the blue one. It's like a matte blue.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
Juneberry, I think.
yeah, Juneberry. Yeah, I think that's really good too.
It's pretty decent, but I think peach is like up there, and then coconut's right
Peaches,
under. There's a couple right under.
coconuts, but I also like the color. I like that very light, crisp blue color of the coconut. I don't know why they decided blue and coconut. What I was gonna say is we call those what you're talking about the people that just the nihilists. They're called seagull managers. I'm sure you've heard this before.
No, I haven't.
They swoop in, they shit on everything. They cover everything in shit, and then they fly off, having contributed nothing. That's what doomers are. Everyone's having a good time. They're like, I think we could really get this done, and we're really making some progress. And they go, bop, bop, bop. They shit on everything, and then they fly off, bop, bop, bop.
You're banned from bird noises.
Oh, don't take that away from me. Come on. I like making the bird noises.
Every episode's gonna be fucking bird noises with you.
What can I say? I'm a man of I like birding. I do know some bird calls. You do some whistles and they respond back.
I used to own a lot of pigeons when I was a kid, believe it or not.
Interesting.
Yeah. But that's besides the point. I don't know. It's just a strange feel. Like, how do you get through to these people? Is the only way to get through to them for them to like be convinced by like, oh shit, everything just got good all of a sudden? Because I think that's like kind of
Shake
where
'em.
we're headed.
Just shake them really hard. I think it's very difficult to change a state of mind, a continual state of mind.
So,
I think you have to completely shift. There's two things. First of all, you have to change their daily activities and routines because the world could be way better, but if they're just sitting doing the same shit they've been doing and nothing changes for them personally, like we could have longevity, right? We could live for 1,000,000 years. But if they're just sitting there angry online, like, uh-oh, guess what? Still sucks. Still fucking sucks.
yeah, that's a good point.
Congratulations. You can be an angry online loser for 3,000 years instead of for 60 years. You did it! Yay!
You know, there's an old like I think it might have been a comedy bit by Louis C.K., but he had a I think I heard him on a radio show describing this or whatever, but he was talking about how basically he was on an airplane, right, where they were talking about, oh, we just, this is the first time we've ever had like internet on this plane or whatever, right, or our airline, and you can use it or whatever and try it out, guys. You know, we got Wi-Fi on the plane, and this guy next to him in the seat, he said he connected to it and it didn't work, and he goes, this shit doesn't fucking work, and like just like was mad or whatever. He's like, this is the first time it's ever existed, like give him a minute, we're in the fucking sky, like this is hard to achieve, you know. But basically like his immediate thing is like, I'm this thing I didn't know existed till I sat in this plane doesn't work properly, and now I'm pissed. And you're probably going to get that with longevity with these same types of people where like, I'm only going to live 500 years, you know, like, or something like that. Like if there's some like concept of like we can only extend life to this extent because your neurons won't survive past this point. There's no way to transfer the consciousness. Sorry, buddy. Right? If we find out like that's the case, it's like, oh well, I only live 2. Yeah, like that's. But it's like you never had that option.
This guy stinks.
You never had that option till now. It would be like me complaining about my robot vacuum because of some of the things that it messes up. I haven't vacuumed my house in like half a year, and that thing does a perfect job mopping and vacuuming. Right? Like just no problems at all. Every once in a while you got to go around the outside because you forget to clean the wheels, and there's like a little streak that starts coming up around the outside edges of the house, right? So you just run a little mop around, everything's good. And then you clean that thing, and then I don't have to fucking vacuum anymore. And I have a big fucking dog with hair everywhere, and it just sucks it all up. That is a literal like luxury I couldn't have imagined 10 years ago. Right? That this would be not only that it's not that expensive to have, but it would be that easy. You have a full-time fucking maid floating around your house vacuuming every day. And we're gonna have that with like robots. People will still complain about like they're like, oh, only rich people are gonna have these robots, so it doesn't matter that these even exist. But then you're gonna have the fucking robot in your house, and you're gonna complain that it doesn't know how to do the roof or something, right? It won't do the gutters for me yet.
Yeah,
This
but
is fucking
like
stupid.
my neighbors actually have a newer robot, so I'm pretty pissed off.
Yeah, you get my point. Like, there's always going to be just this
Well,
fucking.
Elon Musk
complaint.
has 10 robots, and I only have one robot. This is bullshit. It's another way the system's keeping me fucking down, man. Keeping me fucking down. One fucking robot. What am I gonna do with that? One fucking robot? Useless.
I
It's
can't start a
fucking
business
useless.
with my 10 robots that I have. Like every time it keeps going.
That guy has 100 robots. And I am only going to live 800 years. Like, that's useful. What is this?
You just get a couple extra robots to beat the shit out of the other robots so that you can control the market.
Speaking
Chop
of
their
that,
legs off.
Someone posted in here earlier, I think it was you, Lex, the robots that are getting robbed in like California.
You can't
or
have
whatever.
anything nice.
We cannot have anything
nice. Okay, how long until the government doesn't have enough police? We happen to get robotic humanoids at the same fucking time that we get all this artificial intelligence that can like honestly at some point there'll be like
I won't respect robot cops.
Fuck off.
Yeah.
Tesla self-driving.
They're not racist though. They're not racist.
Tesla self-driving will eventually be better than a human, right? Well, you'll get eventually robot cops that are significantly better than a human in terms of everything. Like obviously, like people would bring up the iRobot example of like the stupid part of the story where like it's a certain percentage chance that Will Smith is gonna die versus the kid, but he's pissed at robots for the rest of his life because it didn't save the child. Instead of him, he should let him drown. But the robot makes the assumption that he was the most likely thing to save, so he saved that because the kid was probably going to die anyways. But it didn't try, and that's stupid, right? So that's your general thing. But my point is, eventually, robotic cops are going to be a real thing that is like possible and better than the normal beaten cop, as well as there aren't people signing up on the force anymore. So at what point do you get approval government-wise for these things to be walking around and kicking the shit out of people that try to steal the shit from the little delivery bot? Like, what's the timeline for that regulation-wise? I've been thinking about this
I think if you
now.
see someone stealing from the delivery bot, you should just kick their ass anyways.
Yeah.
They're literally, when you see shit like that going on, right?
That could have been your fries.
Well, no, here's the problem, because people are like, but maybe they're this, maybe they're that. There are so many as someone who lived out of their car and had struggled with a little bit of homelessness, there are so many avenues for obtaining food for people who are in poverty. There are so many. Now, I'm not saying it's always easy, right? And there are people in food deserts, and there are people that are out in like the Appalachian Mountains that live in the middle of nowhere that are poor, and it's a lot harder for them. But as far as like large cities,
there aren't that many people that starve to death in America. There's probably a couple a year, and it's for some weird reason.
There's a lot of malnutrition, but that's because of the American diet and the foods that we produce, right? Not because we don't produce enough food. But like, never at any point in time was I like, I'm gonna have to like steal, right? Because I'm like, oh, there's a food bank here, and there's this service, and I can donate plasma, and I can do this, and there was so many. I was shocked. I was like, well, I don't know how I'm gonna eat. I'm probably screwed because like people, I guess, just starve to death when they don't have any money. And I was trying to go to college at the same time, my first time around. And I was like, oh, wow, you're just going to give me food? I can get like this loaf of bread for like a tenth of the price at this food bank or whatever? Or like you're just going to offer me canned goods? I don't have a can opener, but like I was passionate against so like the problem is when you like start to make excuses and you constantly make excuses, that's what's holding everything back. When you excuse these sort of actions, that's why we can't have anything good. When you see people destroying the world around you, and you're like, oh well, there's circumstances or whatever. Well, you're going to see people with the exact same circumstances that are not doing that. You're going to find people that had much worse circumstances that are still not doing that kind of behavior. But
Yeah,
if you
and
if you if you
end up doing a lot
internalize
better.
it that way, and end up doing a lot better. But
Yeah,
if you internalize it that way and you just say, well, they just whatever. No, these people, they have no respect for society. They have no respect for anything. And when they're destroying things around them because it's fun,
You
that's
ever
why they're doing it.
seen
It's fun and it's
you ever seen
easy.
Chappie?
Hmm.
The robot, he's got the gun. They go. And I think it's just parts of South Africa, right? Like, because it's like so crime ridden. They have all these robot forces going out and fucking shit up. But there was a recent thing that happened with Kai, really famous Twitch streamer. He like giving away like PlayStation 5s or whatever. Ton of his fans came out and started a fucking riot in New York City. There's all sorts of videos of them telling the cops, suck my dick, all that shit. And people are like talking about how all these kids, they have no respect for the police and all that shit, and that's bad. We're gonna like, but at some point, if we get like the approval for this, and we also have the mechanics of like a Chappie bot really exists, and he can detain people. It won't need guns, by the way. It can just grab people, which will kind of be
it's
funny.
just bulletproof. It just walks over.
Well, it's an expendable thing,
Punches him up.
right? It's an expendable thing that doesn't. The only reason it needs a gun is to like shoot someone in case they're trying to kill someone else, right? Quickly disperse with
Or
them,
like
right?
trying to stab someone.
But for most day to day, it wouldn't even need to grab its gun. It just grabs you and cuffs you, right? So you're
He's a
probably
grappling hook.
yeah, the net gun to get you right. But the point is we're gonna have like 10 billion humanoid robots, right? A significant amount of that's probably going to be a police force type robot eventually. So it's going to be something that can overpower you and just like restore order. So I don't even know. Now, obviously the conspiracies like the government would never, they're just immediately going to use it against all of us. And, we're going to be in this like police state. Everyone's got to get in their FEMA coffin and hang out in there.
Oh God.
Right? Like that's, most people kind of think that, but most conspiracy minded people, I should say. But the point is at least in a lot of countries, it's probably going to be a state of we have these to restore order and keep things nice, despite like the attitudes of the people. And I think you're probably going to see some sort of stuff like that where it's like advanced surveillance state where you have actual robotic enforcers that walk around, at least with kind of the same like we have like canine units, right? You'll probably have like cops will have like a few fucking robots to hop out of the car to beat your ass when you start stealing from the robo fucking delivery system.
There's a couple things. Well, the robo thing, a lot of people kick them over. Some people they take the food out of it, but some people just kick them over.
Yeah, they just kick them over. They just kick them over, and that's the thing is
it's the shopping cart. Shopping cart test on a whole new level, by the way. If you're kicking over the delivery
those
bot.
things are really heavy, by the way. Those things are super, because we had some on campus that were smaller, and it got stuck. No, it got stuck, and it was like and it didn't know what the fuck to do. And I'm like, I'll help you out, little robot buddy. And I like go to pick it up, and I'm like, whoo, okay, all right. I'm like doing like a little waddle, and I set it down, and I'm like, jeez. I like look at the camera, and I'm like, I got it. He's good now.
He's like carrying gold and shit.
Yeah, if he was, then I might have. But he was definitely carrying someone's Taco Bell.
John, he's got a crowbar. He's ripping into the fucking delivery bots.
If it says like Federal Reserve robot transfer, I'm
Bitcoin inside. Johnny's fucking cracking it open to check.
I'm not gonna steal somebody's Taco Bell, okay?
I'm not. Really
that's
hungry.
horrible. And then I'll come get my own Taco Bell.
Yeah, the other thing
it's
with
not...
the other thing with the stealing from the bots, like I think like this is a really good thing about Twitter being like less censored these days. It's still fucking censored, by the way, but you're like actually seeing like the state
Stuff
of
that
like
goes
certain
on.
people. There's tons of people who are like, this is not the United States. What do you mean? Like as they're watching like people like riding the fucking robot.
Yes. At the
You know,
start, it
Well,
was
people don't realize how bad the U.S. is. Like this stuff doesn't happen in a lot of modernized nations the way that we have stuff here.
well,
yeah.
a lot of
I
the
mean, we
U.S.
have
is really
massive
nice.
like people not buying into the social system.
A lot
Yes.
of the U.S. is really nice, but you have these like fucking cities that just suck, right? Like that it's a net drain on your life if you fucking live here, and that's the problem. But like, not a lot of people technically know about that. So like, there's tons of
Because they
people
don't
that are
live there.
being
Yeah.
there's tons of people that are being like educated on like how shitty certain parts of the world are. I watched an entire thing where like they legalized decriminalized drugs in I think like Western Oregon, I think somewhere there.
Yeah. I think so
Uh,
too.
there's like a whole city there, and like there's just people that like they are lost, and not a lot of people know about it, but they are lost to drugs. They are forever just until the moment they die. I don't know what happened to Johnny's camera, by the way. He's dead. Maybe his internet went out on him again. But the point I'm making is like, there's lost souls out there that not a lot of people are completely aware of, and
That's one thing.
Go ahead.
That's one thing I noticed with Twitter. Like at first, it was fight videos when Elon got in there. You saw lots of fight videos. Then you saw like, yeah, you just get a glimpse of things that are happening in cities that wouldn't go on, on mainstream news, and yeah, you get a
Well,
glimpse of.
sunlight is the best disinfectant, right? So
Mhm.
that's the good thing about this is like, okay, this looks horrible right now. This is not America. What the fuck? Is that you get more and more people that, whether it be on a political level or a financial level, business level, whatever, they run into a system where they will somehow, by seeing that, change the course of it. Where because it's exposed and out, and there are these people acting this way in public, it's not going to be a thing that will exist forever, right?
Mm.
That's my general opinion on this, because most people are good. And when you see the few people that are bad, it makes you go a bit batty. And that's enough to make enough political, financial, you name it, willpower that is going to make people change the way the world is right now. I really think that the world will go into a positive direction because of seeing shit like this. All right, we've lost Johnny.
Back to the RoboCop thing. Like I don't think it'll be too much of an issue. I think that's something that the government will pass and be like, okay, like that's fine. The other thing is, but if we can build way more robots than we have men to fill these roles, what are we going to be monitoring? Are we going to be looking at more things? Are we going to, are we going to be cracking down on more things? And for example, this is not exactly like this, but China, and I think Japan, no, I think it's just China. They have like camera, like facial recognition stuff, and then they can like send
There's
you
drones
if you
flying
like
around.
jaywalk. Yeah, you jaywalk, and they'll send you like a bill in the mail or something. So I don't know, like this could go really far. How far do you think it'll go?
So I would say that the only reason that we're not going to all be like citizens of China is that the world is pretty like diverse in its control, right? As far as we know, there's never been a time in history where someone technically controlled the entire planet. We've gotten pretty close, right? As far as like the known world.
A few times.
Yeah, we've gotten close as far as the known world goes, but because there's diversity in power and there's always going to be powerful people, Elon is a king. Like, for real, he is 100% a king. He has different kingdoms around the world, these giant fucking factories with massive amounts of people that work for him. He's literally a king. Any time in history you went back and showed them what he's doing, what he is, what he's worth, you name it, right? He's a fucking king.
Yeah.
And that guy, if you get to a certain point, he's not really going to take that. and he's going to move his capital into places where his like way he wants to run things and do things is going to be accepted. And you're going to see a lot of that where, you know, we're talking about like maglev trains and all sorts of like technological advancement in transport, is that you will be able to move with your fucking feet to wherever like people are having a better life. That's what people already do in the United States. They don't like the city they're in. They eventually get to the point where they have escape velocity. They go move, and they leave.
Yeah.
And
I think a lot people
you're gonna have that with country.
Yeah, exactly. I think the finances probably would stops a lot more people. But if everyone was in a position to, people would move a lot quicker too. I think. So,
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be living where I am right now if I was in a better spot financially.
Yeah.
I'd be somewhere else. So
well, that's pretty much what I did. Like in terms of Canada, that's why I like kind of left. Like, yeah, for the most part. But
yeah, you're gonna have like shitty parts of the world that are absolutely gonna do that. They're licking their chops at the idea of the robo thing, but you're probably gonna have, what is it? Is it Saudi Arabia? Like the king of Saudi Arabia or whatever he is like his whole thing is like, no, I want to make my country better for my people as soon as possible. Like we're doing all this stuff to make our education better, you name it, right? Like they're super fucking serious about making themselves the pinnacle of like humanity.
Yeah,
that's like,
I think Saudi is on the rise.
So that's like your country's goal is like, I'm going to make this place the best place that everyone wants to come but can't get in, right? Like I think you're going to have more countries that get people into power that are going to do shit like this. And Elon's an example of this, where he's not necessarily in control of a country, but he has control of a ton of capital. And within the countries that he exists in, I mean, there's no doubt that he has a significant amount of power in China to some degree, just because of that fucking factory there. He controls.
Few people can do that. Few American companies too, not just in automotive, but tech companies have been able to enter the Chinese market like that, like he has.
And
Pretty
he's
impressive.
this is the same guy that's gonna control a ton of the robots in the world, because Tesla's the first customer of the Optimus. Like a ton of robots are going to be working within Tesla. That means you have significantly more power. The point is like each individual, especially people that are already in power, are going to have more power to do good and more power to do bad. You're going to have both ends, but you're never going to have full power to do nothing but bad. This is something that we're not even going to see on a universal level when you get significant longevity and like people are traveling through different planets. How the fuck do you control the entire universe? You can't. There's going to have to be some weird advancement that we couldn't even picture right now for someone to control everything.
We need some clones. You ever seen Revenge of the Clones?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the point is, even in that case, someone else in any war, you're going to be able to turn the tide somehow. Someone's going to come up and kill the top dog. Always going to happen. So, basically, like we're lucky in the organism sense, where even if you have that, which you are going to have, like absolute terrifying police states. China's already got some of that people show, social credit score system, you name it. But you're going to have your Saudi Arabia. You're going to have your Singapore is apparently pretty nice to live in. Obviously, it's pretty like religious, and they'll beat the shit out of you if you steal something.
And it's also it is a very small place as well, and the barrier to entry, like let's say as an investor, is it costs way more to go in there in terms of capital as other places. That's one thing. And then the other is the way that they set up their investment programs to be like a resident there, or to to get like a passport or something. They basically force you to like physically be there for a big portion of time. So that's I think they intentionally did that to keep the quality of their applicants smaller, but in terms of living in a place like that, it's never going to be like a big place where people move. What were we talking about before that?
Just like general like robots being cops and stuff. Like how far does it go? How many laws do they enforce? right? It's basically what we're talking about. We talked about a few things before, but Johnny left.
How did we get to Singapore?
Well, we got to Singapore because we were talking about Saudi Arabia as an example. And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
thought
yeah.
of Singapore
Yeah,
as like you can have like, assuming like you get to the point where Singapore wants these robots type thing, they're going to be perfectly fine there. No one's going to fuck with the robot because you're going to get your ass whooped if you fuck with the robot. But here in America, people can just do that now. So that's the point, is there's going to be different people in different areas where people that are good will flock to the good. And I think that's kind of what you're going to have.
What other countries do you think are going to be hotspots where, like, let's say people move within the U.S. To better places, but what other countries for people that do leave, let's say the West or for other countries? What do you think the next hot spots are going to be in terms of
maybe
better quality of life?
Places like Poland. There's a few other places, but it's like there'll be varying levels of difficulty to get into the place. And the higher level difficulty it is to get there will be how good the place is, right? So that's kind of what you're also going to have there. But there will probably be more, like, even obviously Russia's a boogeyman right now, but there's parts of Russia where you can go there, right? And there's all sorts of unsettled land in Russia. But there is a government program where if you can go and survive there for 5 years on like whatever plot of land that you pick out, I think there's an allotted amount that you can own when you go there.
And it's yours.
If you can survive and settle there, it is your fucking land now. So as time goes on with robotics and solar technology and all sorts of shit, that becomes more and more possible to the point where there are a lot of people that can go and homestead out in these places, and humanity,
and there's a lot of land there.
Humanity can expand as time goes on, and we're probably going to occupy, like, we don't occupy that much of the planet right now, which is kind of funny to think about. This is something that Elon talks about. He said it's actually because someone, you're like, how do you launch so many rockets? Are you worried about, like, debris ever hitting people when these explode or whatever? He says actually it's very hard to hit someone with a rocket.
We've tried.
His point is, like, it would actually be an achievement if you killed someone with rocket debris. It's very difficult, like where people are at, housing and stuff like that. It's certain areas, and even then it's still spread out. So it's difficult.
Well, we've got a lot of water, and we occupy a very little surface area, so that does make sense. But I've been across. I don't if there's a railroad for anyone who wants to see this. You're saying that Russia might expand in the future if we can actually live in these places, but there is a railroad you can take, and it's quite an incredible feat of engineering because it goes through like mountains, forests, like deserts. You can go from Moscow to Vladivostok, through Siberia, through Mongolia, and end up in Beijing. The Trans-Siberia Railroad. If anyone can do it,
isn't there a Vice documentary on going on this railroad?
I don't Vice anymore, but there might be.
It was when Vice was fun to watch. Those days.
And then they got bought or something.
Yeah. What are you saying? You went on this?
Yeah, and I not like a while ago, but looking to do it again. And I was like shut down for a bit, but it's pretty incredible from the different places you go into, and you see these like tiny villages where there's nothing around. There's nothing really connected to it, and you just randomly pass through with the railroad. You stop in some of these villages. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, the one thing I remember from the Vice documentary was there was a point of it where they went through a part of that railroad where they'd stopped, and there were a ton of North Korean workers up there working in like the timber mines or something like that, or timber mines,
or like labor camps,
labor type thing. But they weren't working for whatever. They're talking to him, and like this Western guy's like coming at them or whatever. And at one point, like one of the North Korean guys, because he's the only guy who would talk to them, right, He goes, "How about you mind your fucking business?" At one point, he like tells him like, he's like, I'm doing whatever I got to do to make my family live. Fuck off. Like I don't care about like your politics or whatever. Because like basically like it's the whole like North Korea is the worst place on earth. I'm sure it's not very fun to live for a lot of people, but the propaganda on it is that any moment now they're all going to starve to death. They're completely fucked. They have no power. It's just like, I don't know, dude. At some point they gotta starve, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, here's the thing. I think I do want to go to North Korea at some point. There is one ski resort, and I want to go snowboard there and just check it out. Yeah, like there's areas the tourists aren't like. If you're allowed to go there, there's places you're not allowed to go see or record anything. But I'd like to check it out. I know people are scared, but I think you'd be all right.
Yeah, you'd probably survive. You got enough charm. I sense it. You'll be fine.
You just bring these. I'm not American also, so they're like, oh yeah, he's all right. Well, no, I bring you put flowers at the bottom of the statue of Kim Jong Un. That's like a tradition thing. I don't know. And then you can have like these tour guides that show you around, and they're very proud of these like World War II tanks that they like captured or something. They like showcase that. And then far out where you can record anything because it's not near the main areas, there's a ski resort. So I'll check it out at some point, I guess.
Would you be able to like? I don't know what their laws are like. Do people have like pictures of that and stuff? Be interesting to go look at.
Yeah, there's a video. So there's this one guy. I think he was a pro skier or something. But he was accompanied by two North Korean tour guide girls, and they were telling him what he can and can't record. And then he went and like skied there. I'll find the video.
It's interesting.
But yeah. I wouldn't mind
that was
going there
the one thing that I do remember about that Siberian railroad thing. Was like they made that such a fucking point of the documentary, and this guy at one point just says, "Mind your fucking business." It's like I'm feeding my family.
Through Korea though, so maybe it was a different thing. Yeah.
Well, it was North Korean laborers that were sent there to that part. Basically, is how it worked. But yeah, it was just I'll never forget that guy saying, "Dude, go fuck yourself and feed my family here. I don't give a fuck what you think," because he's like, "Oh, don't you hate being like oppressed in North Korea?" And he's just like, "Go fuck yourself." Like it's really funny because we have such this like the West has this like telling the rest of the world how to live attitude like constantly, and I think like a lot of places like that are just frankly tired of it. So that was kind of like the point I was making there.
I found a video, North Korean labor camps by Vice in 2011, so I think that was just right before they were bought and stuff went downhill from there. They made pretty cool stuff before then. So in this video's description, it says North Korea has come up with a new way to bring cold hard cash into its isolated country, export North Korean workers to slave away in the Siberian forest, often without telling them that they're no longer in North Korea. We set out to investigate these camps and almost landed ourselves in quite a bit of trouble. Dude, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting like thing. Like, obviously, it's not ideal to be one of these North Koreans, but like,
they don't even know they're not in North Korea.
But the point is, they're always making like this. The whole thing just became about that rather than him just traveling this road. That was basically you were more interested in that aspect of it, but they turned it into the political bit, obviously, because you know North Korea is the only fucking. It's the ultimate point is that like we lost the war with them, right? Like we haven't won the war. It's still at a standstill. I mean, the last thing that I remember that actually happened between the two nations was there was this fucking tree that they planted. I don't remember who planted it, but for some reason it's extremely significant. But we sent some military guys out there to, I think we sent two or three guys out there, and they trimmed the tree so that we could see over it or whatever, right? Get better visual on the North Koreans as we're defending the border. Yep, there you go. But they go there and they start trimming the tree, and I think one of the guys, the military guys that came up from North Korea to like, hey, what the fuck are you doing to this tree? Was called the Bulldog or something like that, and he had like 4 guys with him, and they said stop cutting that tree, but you can't order them to do anything because they're on the other side of the fence as far as like they're our military. So fuck you, I'm gonna keep chopping this tree attitude. And he goes, okay, kill them. And then the North Korean soldiers fucking take the axes from our soldiers and chop them up. Like,
No
and
way.
they had a bunch of soldiers come up and chop them because they defiled this fucking tree that's significant to them, right? So this is what we did in retaliation of this, instead of obviously like bombing them or something, is we sent roughly 800 or 900 people out to go chop down the tree. And that's why that tree's all chopped down like that.
800, 900. Jeez.
Yeah.
One
And there was helicopters overhead and stuff. It was like
Must have been bushy.
So that was our dominance method of like, well, we're gonna chop this fucking tree down now. That's how weird the war with North Korea is. Like, that's why you see so much weird like propaganda with them. I don't know if you've ever seen that. There was that lady who, she's got all these stories about like entire parts of this village. Oh, they only survive on rats and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of like debunking videos of this lady. All of her stories do not line up. I forget her name, but she was on the Joe Rogan Experience, and like of course Joe Rogan's like, whoa, like the whole time, like he just believes everything.
Jamie, search that up.
and half of it's like this lady's like affiliated with things, and she's clearly like a propaganda agent, like against North Korea. Like,
Yeah.
that's her deal.
Yeah.
And basically, like, everyone kind of thinks that like we're in this position where like we know everything, we're Westerners, but you fucking don't know everything. You don't know how much stuff is just there as like complete like fabricated stuff. Like, so I'm even suspicious of some of the China stuff. With obviously there's like social credit stuff, but the thing they don't tell you about it is that you have to break laws to actually like go to jail there for social credit reasons. Here in like America, if you say the wrong things in public, you don't have to break laws to like lose your livelihood, and like you can no longer be employed. So it's like we who are we to fucking say anything about them? We have a arguably just worse system, because at any moment the bad thing you said changes. Now you're canceled forever. So it's just this very strange, like, we think we're so superior to everyone else in the world. It's fucking strange.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Some countries have different strong suits. We have different strong suits and different flaws, I guess, for sure. But and we also forget that. Well, we don't forget, but China is also huge. The parts that are actually monitored and like this are, a bit smaller, but obviously more dense areas. But you can live in mountains in China if you wanted to.
There's tons of people that just like, they live so far into China that they are like separated as far as like they're damn near like native, like an Amazonian tribe. Like they don't really care that much about technology. They farm just enough to eat. They're not really even part of the economy of China, and that exists in the millions of people.
Yep. Yeah, there's some. There's so many. It's a huge area, and also, I think one of the biggest cities in the world is in China, and it has like 30-something million people in it, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, then that's just like one tiny area. It's very dense, but
there's like medieval fights that go on the border of China.
Really? I'd like to partake.
So the border, there's this like unagreed zone of how much of this is our border, how much of this is your border, on the border of India and China. I forget exactly what part of the border, but there's a border dispute, right? And they got tired of fucking shooting each other, right, over this border dispute because no one can agree what side is theirs, right? So they made rules. And they said none of us can
Anything
use...
goes.
No, they said none of us can use bullets. None of us can use grenades, explosives, you name it, right? They made these like, we cannot use modern arms to fight each other. So they fucking fight with maces and swords and electric. But the problem is that they didn't make rules against electricity. So India beats the fuck out of these Chinese people all the time because they're advancing like electric gloves and batons to like shock you and then stab you to death. And like,
Wait, are these border people or are these like civilians?
They're military.
Oh, okay.
So they're trained military members that are like every so often they send a couple hundred to go fucking sword fight to the death on the border. This is happening today in on the border of India and China.
In China. Why are we live streaming this shit? We need to send some people out there.
Oh yeah, you ever see those medieval like little war fight things? Like seeing the actual thing would be way crazier. But
I've been to one of those medieval time things where there was like jousting and shit.
You know, we had one of those at my school. I didn't even like, it was weird, like it just came out of nowhere. But we had a big grass part on my my elementary school, right? And I think I was in second grade, and they had one of those big medieval things. They all came out, and it was fun. It was like really fun to watch, and I'll never forget, as long as I live, that when the jousting was I remember I think it was a green knight knocked down like a red knight or something, and the red knight's laying on the fucking ground. So you know, this is show for the kids or whatever, it's fun or whatever. But he goes up to him with a sword and a basically he goes up to him with the sword and he goes like, "Should I do it, kids?" And all the kids at once kill him. Like it's fucking hilarious. The entire school is screaming, like we're a bunch of school kids screaming for blood. Like the girls are screaming like no, but the kids are like, "Fucking, you fucking won, motherfucker, kill him." And we're a bunch of like below fifth graders, right? Like, and I think about that every once in a while. Like, hey, the kids, you don't have to teach them to murder each other; they'll do it. but that's a weird thing to think about psychology. Like, if he really would have done it, we probably would have been horrified. But there was definitely this funny thing. Oh God, dude, the tree needed some freedom. I read that earlier.
Didn't need 800-900 people. They just needed one guy on a tractor.
Yeah, but I think you did raise a good point though about like these parts of China that are doing that are like small parts of China. So more than likely, yeah. I mean, we technically already have some of this technology here. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's one where it's like through various levels of machine learning, they identify out each person. A cop was showing it, and it like shows exactly where a drug house is. And they like delete all the vehicles on the screen and show the path and stuff. And they narrow down which house is the drug dealing house just by machine learning. Took them 5 minutes. There it is, going. And like that's where you want to like optimize laws, so that way the laws we're enforcing are worth it, because we're headed towards a point where we have the throughput to enforce every law that's coming, you know?
Yeah.
So,
like, imagine you could still drive a car. Let's say I think eventually, like, they may ban that. Like, where you're not going to drive anymore. It'll just be like robo-taxis like or whatever.
Areas that you can drive legally, and then areas that you can't, because I think this speed limit's going to go to like 150 when it's fully automated. To be honest,
yeah,
these vehicles are fully capable of it, and the robot driving.
If they all communicate, then they can synchronize. Yeah, that makes sense.
Not even close to a problem. You travel across the United States in fucking hour. Like I see that.
You got to be going pretty quick for that. You need
Well,
to be
you get my
going
point.
like
Is like
yeah.
depending on where you're going, but yeah.
Yeah. So let's say, what was I going to say with that? Yeah. Well, we were saying robo. You don't drive, yeah, you don't drive. What were you saying before that? Oh yeah. Yeah. So let's say you do drive. What if they like your speed's monitored every second? You can't do like anything. Every little turn, every like. You just get home, you get like a huge violations list every time.
Well, technically, you already have that with Tesla insurance.
Yeah.
If you have Tesla insurance, it monitors how
They
you
know
drive,
everything.
and
Yeah.
your expenses go up and down, and that ends up making Tesla insurance like significantly cheaper because if you drive properly, it's pretty cheap. But
That, and also they know how much everything costs because it's their own vehicle.
oh yeah, that's a good point. I didn't know that. I didn't think about that, but yeah, that's my point of like, at what level do we need to start like, because we have infinite throughput on how many laws we can enforce and monitor and
Yeah.
send out the fines. So
Mhm.
that's where you need like a legislation thing where we start legislating based on the new paradigm of AI in general. Is like, look, he didn't kill anybody. He went 100 on the highway. He was having fun.
Mhm.
There was nobody around. Like there
Yeah.
might need to be layers of like AI agents can measure intent. He was pissed that day, you name it. And then laws are kind of on a per person basis, as well as laws might get more lax as humans run towards singularity and things are more abundant, you know?
Yeah.
Fucking tree.
I agree. Well, yeah. So if in the areas where you're allowed to drive, they're going to be more relaxed on stuff because, well, yeah. And then the robo era as well, no driving laws because you're not driving. Yeah, it could get interesting. How do you think those lunch delivering robots will improve if they do? Do you think they'll be like more humanoid robots or just
Shotgun
more
trap.
capable in the future?
Oh, never mind. No, I
Yeah, it's a
think,
grenade inside.
okay, so I think there's a few things where unless we figure out how to make a drone quiet, we're not going to have drones delivering everything. We'll have drones delivering some things. Drones are very versatile as far as how they can go, and the technology is technically ready now. It's just a matter of mainly the battery to some extent, but you can deliver a lot of stuff with drones right now. Problem is they're loud. People are looking into the way like an owl has certain feather configuration on the back of the feather, makes it fly silently. So when it stalks and kills prey, you can't even hear it. You can't even hear an owl fly with extremely sensitive microphones. Can't hear it. Versus any other bird flying or a drone. So there's technically some way that we can make these drones fly very quietly. We'll figure it out maybe. But until we do that, probably not. So what you'll probably have is wheels are extremely efficient. So we have hybrid drone and wheeled vehicle technology that we're working on. But more than likely, you're going to kind of have hubs. So I think you'll have like you open the UPS vehicle and the drones fly out and go deliver everything in the neighborhood. They won't.
Yeah, I agree.
They'll roll out. Is my point. But maybe you'll have degrees where, like, honestly, sometimes the best solution is the easiest solution, quote unquote easy. But the once you get like to the point where you just have humanoid robots that are perfectly capable, they'll just walk it to the person's thing, and it won't matter as much, even if it's even if it's less efficient. It will become what happens because it's just more versatile. It doesn't need to.
It doesn't decrease the time really. Yeah,
It doesn't
like
need to.
you can't.
Doesn't need to compensate for like a pathway being blocked or whatever. It just walks around. You know.
Yeah, you'll have like a van that pulls up in the neighborhood, and then it's like a SWAT team that comes out, but it's all like humanoid robots delivering UPS packages.
Big smiley faces on their face. You know.
Yeah, they've got a package gun. They just like shoot at the house.
Yeah, I think that's more than likely part of it is that you're Elon kind of talked about this specifically with cars, but you'll have people that are kind of like the modern day sheep farmer, but they have the Teslas that they're monitoring, like their fleet of robo taxis that they own. And they
Yeah,
tend to their flock. Like
yeah. We've been waiting for
basically,
those robo taxis.
nobody escapes farming, and that's what we're gonna have. Is like you're just gonna do it in the cyberpunk sense, where you just have a fleet of robots that you have do things for people, and that's how you make money. And I can see this with like UPS as well. So that's probably what you'll have.
Hmm. Yeah, the drone thing. There's definitely a lot of things to overcome uh, for it to work a lot better than like a car in the neighborhood. There was also this. I don't know if this video shows it. I saw this on Twitter a while ago. We
Yeah,
skipped
is
to
I think that's the one where they basically they rocket these drones like long distance, and it like
yeah,
there's
yeah,
parts of Africa where it's delivering like blood bags and shit to
blood.
hospitals
Yeah, yeah.
and food
Hmm.
to certain people. So, you, what you're generally getting here with like the drone revolution, it doesn't even have to be like a literal like propeller drone, but autonomous vehicles that can go about and do things that you tell it to do.
Yeah.
We're basically gathering more and more capabilities with this, where resources will get to people that need them, whether they can pay for them or
Hmm.
not is possibly irrelevant in the future because of abundance. So, uh,
Yeah.
Johnny and I have kind of talked about this before, but once you get 10 billion robots that are all humanoid that can do things that a human can do, you can take inventory of
Hmm.
everything on Earth. Every
Yeah,
resource there
basically.
is, we can go grab it and refine it now. Like all the stuff that made it more expensive to go like literally grab all the gold in this certain spot is no longer a problem. These things work 24 hours a day. They don't give a fuck. And then if we get L9K stuff, then energy is significantly easier to deal with in that case. And then if we get
Yeah.
fusion or significant solar panels paired with mass battery storage, you even get cheaper energy. So,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
you know,
Almost. You can almost get it to be free. The Yeah, and also let's say that the parts to build the bots become a lot cheaper, and say some software for like vision software or whatever, it becomes open source and easy to use. Do you think you'll have problems where you have like people that make killer bots that just go out and like do shit?
yes, you're absolutely going to have this. This is why one of the projects that I hope to be in the position to work on is mainly like defense based AI. Is
Hmm.
uh, obviously people the fucking what's the Skynet, right? You create
Yeah, yeah.
Skynet and now you kill the
Hmm.
world. But I think that that's just a fucking movie. Sorry to say it,
Yeah.
but more than likely we're going to be able to create AI that defends people. And when you have enough throughput to hunt down people that are doing shit like this, then you get a more peaceful world. And then if you get to the point where you as a person just have a robot that defends you, or multiple robots that defend you, or they will just defend you because they're part of your fleet of robots, a lot more polite people. It's kind of like the an armed society is a polite society. I think it's the same with like the robotic future that we're headed towards as well, where the average human has a significant amount more power than any human in history because they have 20 robots that follow them around doing whatever. That would be eventually your average, I think. So, of course,
Hmm.
there's still going to be people in like layers of like extreme poverty, but you might also
Yeah.
that their extreme poverty might be having one helper robot. You never know. And then we might now also get to the point where you transcend humanity and just put yourself on a hard drive. I don't know. That's up to some people to decide on. So there's lots of weird paths all this can go down.
Yeah. It'd be pretty interesting.
Um,
Yeah.
did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I was just thinking about the those food delivery robots again, how we can improve them, but
Well, so the theory behind why they exist is like the one of the startups that runs those said that why are we taking a 3 to 4 ton vehicle to deliver a
little meal.
a pound worth of stuff? Like, this is inefficient. So in theory, especially in an urban environment with, like, you're in a
Yep.
cityscape,
Fence.
they
Yeah.
really are good. But the problem is the people. uh,
Mm.
so like in theory, it's a perfectly profitable business in the long run. Um, there's tons of demand for give me food and I don't have to cook. But at some point, you're probably going to transition where those are delivering raw materials to each individual person's domicile, right? Wherever you live. And your robot cooks for you. Your robot makes certain things for you. I've lost Lex. Okay, I think Lex died. It was nice knowing him. If he doesn't come back in like a little bit here, I am probably just going to end it. I was giving him some time to add anything else onto my rants. Okay, he's back. Hello. Your mic's
There.
muted. Did you break something?
Yeah, well, switched my to a second AirPod and Discord froze.
Nice. What are you on,
How's
by the
that
way? Are you on like a
possible?
Mac or?
Yeah, there we go.
What
Yeah,
are
I don't
you
know.
on?
Never happened.
Are you
MacBook
on
Pro.
MacBook Pro? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Here, I'll send you. Where's the chat here?
Oh, nice. I've heard decent things about the M2 chips.
Yeah, it's been good so far. The only thing is, like, developer wise, it's got like a few little quirks, but yeah, it's getting polished out since the Apple Silicon chips in their MacBook Airs have been out for at least a couple years. So but still a few compatibility issues. But in terms of speed and performance for things that do work, pretty impressed.
Yeah.
Battery life's like killer, quiet, stays cold.
Yeah, for someone that like travels around as much as you do, it makes sense that you'd have a laptop like that.
Yeah, you can
But
power like a bunch of displays and stuff, so I like it. And then M2 Ultra, which they introduced not I don't think in MacBooks, but in the Mac Studio, which is like the Mac Mini. It's like standalone Mac Studio in Mac, the cheese grater looking one. I think went to Silicon now. So
how
yeah,
much can you say about the project you're working on with the goggles thing?
in terms of like the tech itself or like
Uh,
software or
well, the main reason I wanted to ask you is like, how close do you think? Because you're literally like developing some of this technology. How
yeah.
close do you think we are to? I mean, fuck, L9K might be another reason this happens, but how close are we to? You got your battery pack with your computer or whatever, like connected some way, like it's like your phone, right? And then you got your
Mhm.
goggles.
Like
Kind of like,
that's the normal thing that
how
people
long
are just
till
walking
that's
around.
normal?
I think, well, first, if we nail down the tech, like somebody's gonna nail it down eventually. You'll get really good compute, long battery life, experience is gonna be good, and won't be like heavy and uncomfortable to carry around. Then at that point, I think it'll take like 1 to 2 years until people are just walking around with it. Also, yeah, so let's say you nailed on everything. The tech is really good. It's super useful, comfortable to walk around. It's like accepted. People are using it for stuff. The apps are useful. Then I think it's inevitable that they will either pair with the carriers at first, so that you can buy like a data plan or whatever and get the headset on contract. That way you'll pay like I don't know, maybe like $50 a month plus whatever data for it. Because eventually, if you nail it down, you don't really need a phone really anymore. It'll
Yeah,
do all that stuff.
you get my point. Is like you won't even need a computer at some point.
Pretty
Where,
much, yeah.
because with the AR that they're offering with the new Apple.
Apple, yeah.
What was that?
Vision Pro.
Vision Pro, yeah.
Yeah.
It that would be something that like it would be weird to be wearing the goggles all day, but I'll admit
Yeah.
like I have like 3 screens in front of me with most of my day, and I use
Yeah.
all of them, and I actually want more, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I could do multiple desktops and stuff like that, but the
And you might
concept of
even
just having screens in places that
Mhm.
I can monitor things on is fucking useful to me, like extremely useful. And
I know
I think a
I know
lot
you
of
say you
people are going
don't.
to do this, but go ahead.
Yeah, I know you say you're never really you don't go out a whole lot, but I think that like for me, if I'm out doing things and I have like ideas or things I want to work on or things pop in my head, then I'm like like I make a mental note of it, and then like when I'm back on my computer or something, then I work on it. But what if you're just like out and about, you're like doing something and you're in like a transitory period to doing something else? You could just like pop up some screens, do a couple things real quick, and like I think it'll increase your productivity.
I mean, I think it's. I know a guy who's part of his own little startup, but he's mainly working on UI-less AI. So it's all voice.
Okay.
I'm sure he'll eventually have some sort of UI, but effectively you tell it to take notes. You ask it things. It's everything you want Alexa or Siri to be is what he's working on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Even to the point where if you need to, you can call it with your phone. It's going to be meant for like older people who don't like interact with technology as much. It would be like having a personal assistant that stores a bunch of
Yep.
shit about you that you want it to. Effectively, even on just that level, we're headed towards like different levels of productivity where like you have an intelligent note-taking app that like
Yeah.
keeps track of things for you. So I think eventually, because right now you can just take out your phone, you write your notes down or whatever, but there's a lot of like neurons that have to go. But by the time you got like things going, you might get distracted by something, you name it, right? What you're talking about, like the productivity, is like you just tap your goggles real quick and you make your note or move your thing around. You're waiting at a terminal or
Mhm.
something. You're working everywhere you want to go. So
Yeah, exactly.
for the higher end people that do a lot of like roundabout business stuff or developing of things, it's
Mhm.
going to be immensely fucking useful to these people. So once you
But
nail it,
even like just beyond productivity, another well, everyone's going to be a customer of some sort of device like that in the future. But aside from just productivity, let's say people want to watch like some entertainment or do something like that, where it's simultaneously going to become a brain interface or interacting device as well. So it'll get some feedback from your thoughts as well. So you'll be able to it'll just pull up automatically like YouTube videos or like a Netflix just based on like what you're thinking and the patterns. So it'll have its own algorithm for that, so that you're not even really spending time searching for anything. You just you got a bit of time, pops up stuff. Yeah.
yeah, I think that whole future is definitely like true. With generative AI, at some point with the brainwave scanner or whatever device becomes useful, is that you'll have a future where all interfaces are personalized to you. Like where
Yeah, for
just
sure.
where your
For
eyes
sure.
go, things just move around. Like that whole like touching things with your hands or whatever is going to
Mhm.
eventually be useless because it'll read your mind and just move things around how you want.
Yeah. Dude,
People are going to feel like gods.
just your mind data and your like where you look, like iris data, that itself can, if you can just using that, you can build some pretty neat stuff that require very little hand interaction. So
Yeah,
you're not going to be like clicking keyboards and stuff virtually with your like fingers or with like a remote or something.
yeah.
That's
I think that anything with your actual hands doing anything is like a thing of the past. with
It's basically like having a stylus on an iPad. You got fingers, you know.
Do you know why keyboards have all the keys are like mixed and adjacent?
For effectiveness of writing.
No. So there's two things with the keyboard, right? Is number one, all the keys are scrambled in that QWERTY fashion because people would break the typewriters when they were in alphabetical order because your brain intuitively knew exactly where everything is. It's the alphabet, right? So you would type too fast, and these are old mechanical machines that need grease and all kinds of shit. Not kidding.
Type slower, scramble it.
So they scrambled it into QWERTY to make it more reliable in that way. And then another part that they did with QWERTY is that the reason there's like each, you notice they're not lined up perfectly with each other, each key on your keyboard, right? And to this day, we still do this because you used to need a line track that went up and then pressed that key into the paper, right? So that on a mechanical level, you couldn't line up all the keys. You needed to skew them so that the rods would go up, and that's still like a artifact that we see to this day. Is those two things in keyboards? So
even though they don't really matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter at all. There's a ton of like keyboard like enthusiasts out there that do all kinds of stuff that different layouts, but the point is you're probably going to see weird stuff like that where like our mentality still isn't forward thinking enough to get rid of things like, oh, we're going to need hand gestures. Eventually you won't need them. Like basically like part of what makes us human is that we actually slow down our own progress with certain things because of
when we just skip certain things.
Yeah, we'll probably skip things, but yeah, I see a future where basically all AI generated user interfaces, and it's all based on your own data, based on you. So
yeah, like we've mentioned before. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
We mentioned on a previous live, but even like games would be a bit more tailored to you. Yeah, maybe even music, who knows? Stuff that resonates a lot more with you. But and then this follow-up thing with that is, how are you going to play with your friends online if they don't have a same version of the song? Or how are you going to send music to your friends when they're like I don't like this song because it was completely tailored to you? But then you're just going to have fake virtual friends that you think are real. Imagine.
Yeah, it's called, I call it generated solipsism, where your life is just, you know what solipsism is?
Yeah.
Yeah. To explain it to anyone listening to this in the future, solipsism is you literally think that you're the only conscious being in the universe and everything else is just a figment of your imagination. You're like a brain in a vat at simulating your environment.
Yeah. You might become that.
We have the technology, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's very close to the Facebook released that AI generated music. You know, their newest model of that. It's pretty fucking good. Like, it's not terrible. You can even generate sounds, like generate ambulance sounds in the background.
Was that somebody that was generating stuff in the chat before, like short MP3s and stuff? Is that what they were using?
What
like
was it?
Yeah. I think it was like a ringtone or something.
Maybe, I don't know. I might have missed that.
Also, did you do anything with the new model that Meta dropped?
The newest llama model. I only played with it a little bit on the nat.dev playground, but it's fucking stupid and really censored, but
Eesh. To be expected, actually.
We're pretty much like somebody. Okay, so there's like a model in there, right, with all this data that's good. So it's just going to take someone to fine tune it, and there are already like models out there that are like decensoring this stuff. So eventually you're just going to fine tune it to be what you want. And more and more powerful models will be released, no matter what the pledges from Anthropic and others, where they made the pledge that we're no longer going to release anything significantly more powerful than GPT-4 to the public. It's just like, okay, good luck. Someone else is going to do it. So
yeah,
it's just like a half measure. But anyways, we've been talking for quite some time. This would be the longest one we've done so far. But
3.25 hours.
yeah. But yeah, so I was going to end it here, but